Chapter 2026. Your teacher is the number one in the world. Chu Yang murmured. Yes, number one in the world. It seemed as if these 4 words had given the little girl unlimited confidence. She immediately felt relieved, and lay back down. It was unknown what she had thought of, but she giggled twice. Then, she rolled over and turned over to face Chu Yang. Chu Yang, what are you thinking about? I'm thinking of doing you on the spot. Chu Yang roared in his heart, but he said with an aggrieved expression, nothing. But your face is so red. The little girl put her hand on Chu Yang's forehead. Your head is so hot. Is it a fever? I am feverish, my whole body is feverish. Chu Yang murmured in his heart and begged for mercy. Qingwu, sleep. There may be a battle tomorrow. Mo Qingwu nodded and stretched. Suddenly, her eyes turned and she thought of something. She leaned close to Chu Yang's ear and asked in a low voice, Chu Yang, do you like women with big breasts? Mo Qingwu's little mouth was right next to Chu Yang's ear. Her warm breath blew into his ear. Her breath smelled like orchids. Chu Yang only felt itchy and soft. He almost lost his mind on the spot. He moaned, little girl, don't ask such an impure question. Mo Qingwu snorted. Her eyes turned and she suddenly lifted her blanket. The next moment, she lifted Chu Yang's blanket and giggled. Before Chu Yang could react, she had already burrowed into Chu Yang's blanket. Chu Yang's whole body stiffened. He felt a chill on his neck. The little girl's tender arms had already wrapped around him. She giggled and said, Chu Yang, hugging you to sleep is the most comfortable. As she said, she rested her head on Chu Yang's chest. Chu Yang grimaced. He quietly moved his body and clamped her head between his legs. His breathing became more and more rapid. You're disobedient. Hurry up and sleep. You want to sleep now? Mo Qingwu giggled. She pouted and kissed Chu Yang's mouth with her rosy lips. Sleep. She closed her eyes. Chu Yang really felt like he was going to die. He was suffocating. He was going to explode. Your body is getting hotter and hotter, Mo Qingwu whispered. Chu Yang felt a weight on his body as the little girl's thigh pressed down on him. She hugged his neck with both hands and rested her head on his shoulder. Her thigh pressed heavily on his lower abdomen as she muttered complacently. Then, she breathed lightly. He was actually about to fall asleep. Chu Yang felt that his whole body was on fire. He was about to be burned by the raging flames. He hastily recited the clear heart incantation. However, he was getting more and more upset. His body was sticky and sweaty. The little girl seemed to have fallen asleep. Chu Yang slowly loosened his legs. His face was twisted, and he was speechless. How was he going to spend the night? What is this? Mo Qingwu muttered with a frown. She closed her eyes and reached down to grab something. He bent it to the side. Hiss. Chu Yang sucked in a breath of air. He barely managed to turn his body sideways to avoid the sharp edge. Chu Yang himself didn't know how he had managed to get through this night. He counted with his eyes wide open. After counting for 2 hours, his mind slowly calmed down. Then, he felt a wave of happiness, peace, and comfort. The person he loved was in his arms. All his regrets had been made up for. At this point in life, what more could he ask for? Chu Yang sighed blissfully. At this moment, Mo Qingwu in his arms frowned. Her face showed a pained and sorrowful expression. Her body twisted as if she was about to wake up, but she didn't. She seemed to be dreaming. Chu Yang hugged her gently and tenderly. The person in his arms calmed down. Chu Yang was about to fall asleep in a daze. Suddenly, he felt a little wet on his chest. He looked over and saw that Mo Qingwu's eyes were tearing up continuously, but she obviously wasn't awake yet. I'm dreaming again. Chu Yang sighed. Suddenly, he was shocked. Dreaming again? What kind of dream was she having? Could it be? Mo Qingwu's mouth opened slightly. She panted quickly and said, Don't let me leave. Chu Yang held his breath. But after Mo Qingwu said this, she didn't speak for a long time. She just couldn't stop crying. After a long time, Chu Yang was a little confused. He was about to close his eyes when suddenly, his chest tightened. Mo Qingwu's little hand grabbed his collar tightly. She closed her eyes and cried. Her little hand was so tight that her knuckles turned white, but she refused to let go. Only her tears flowed. Chu Yang sighed. He was about to hold her completely in his arms when suddenly, Mo Qingwu tightened her grip even more. She grabbed his collar and said intermittently, Chu Yang, if there's a next life. Look at me one more time. I'm prettier than a sword. Chu Yang's whole body shook. He was dumbfounded. His eyes suddenly widened. But there was no light in his eyes. Only tears flowed quietly. Qing Wu, you've finally achieved this dream. I'm prettier than a sword. I'm prettier than a sword. Chu Yang's heart began to ache as if it was overturning rivers and seas. Mount Xingyun. It was said that this was the place where the stars fell. Legend had it that when the Almighty was folding the heavens, he accidentally made a big move and caused the surrounding stars to fall down neatly. After burning the air, they fell to the sky above the level heaven continent. Seeing that the newly folded level heaven continent was about to be destroyed, the Almighty was very unhappy. Hence, he waved his hand and collected all the fallen stars. He crumpled them into a ball and threw them to the level heaven continent. After this piece was thrown down, it became a mountain range made up entirely of meteorites. The entire mountain range was a single entity. It couldn't be separated at all. And it was hard. No divine weapon could separate it from Mount Xingyun. Even a rock the size of a fingernail. And legend had it that this mountain had the power of the stars and was full of miracles. And the reason why the Zhuge clan chose to build a city here was because they saw the unlimited mysterious power of Mount Xingyun. And the great nebula divide array of heavenly secrets was carved on Mount Xingyun. Then, it activated the secrets of heaven and attracted the power of the stars to complete this array. To a certain extent, this great nebula divide array of heavenly secrets was a product of heaven and earth. And, ever since the formation of this array, the Zhuge clan had never succeeded in building a second array of the same kind. It could also be said to be the only array in the world. When Bu Liuqing and Moon Breeze set foot on this mountain, the night was hazy and it was snowing heavily. The three of them walked up step by step from the foot of the mountain, admiring the scenery along the way. I heard that this mountain is the #1 mystical object in the heavens. Yu Lingxue smiled and said, I have been here several times. With my cultivation, I can't dig out the rocks on this side of the mountain. It is really hard. Bu Liuqing rolled his eyes and pointed at the mountain. He said, there is only one thing that I am curious about now. In such a hard place, these trees. How did they grow here? Moon Breeze and Moon Breeze smiled bitterly together. This matter was really inexplicable. Bu Liuqing walked to the front of a tree. He smiled lightly and stretched out his hand. Pa. This small tree that was as thick as the mouth of a bowl was cut in half. Looking closer, they could see dense growth rings at the cut. It was impossible to count them all. They were completely connected. This is an ordinary tree that has grown here for at least 10,000 years, and it is only as thick as the mouth of a bowl, but its weight is comparable to star iron. Bu Liuqing weighed the tree in his hand and said lightly, if it is made into a stick for someone, it can really smash a martial saint to death. He pondered and said, an ordinary tree. Just because of the different environment it grew in, it can cause such a result. If it is a human, what will happen? Moon Breeze and Moon Breeze were also deep in thought. Bu Liuqing waved his hand and the accumulated snow on the ground was pushed away, revealing the dark stone ground. The pine tree's roots grew in a thin crack, flat and flat. Bu Liuqing bent down and dug his finger into the crevice of the stone and pulled with all his might. The crack didn't move at all. Bu Liuqing's finger made a cracking sound. Bu Liuqing withdrew his hand and stood up. He said somewhat awkwardly, did you see that? Even with my cultivation, I can't move a rock on Mount Xingyun. Phut. Cough cough. Feng Yuro laughed instantly. Yu Lingxue also couldn't help but laugh. He said, Brother Bu, what I saw was. Although this mountain is hard and we can't move it, the soft tree roots can take root in it and grow into a towering tree. So, no matter how meticulous a plan is, there will still be loopholes. Bu Liuqing perked up and said, You're right. I wanted to say this just now, but my finger hurt and I forgot. Foam Euro finally laughed without caring about her image. The three of them laughed together. When they came, they were still a little nervous. But in this laughter, it disappeared without a trace. The three of them, one in front and two behind, walked leisurely towards the peak of the mountain. The Dharma Supreme stood at the peak of the mountain with his hands behind his back. Hearing the laughter coming from the foot of the mountain, a strange smile appeared on his face. How carefree. Even at this point, they can still laugh. At the side, Wu Jueqing sat on a pitch-black rock and said indifferently, they won't be able to laugh soon. The Dharma Supreme laughed and suddenly let out a long whistle. He said softly, Brother Yu, are you here? Yu Lingshue's voice came from the mountainside. Bah! Dharma Supreme, what right do you have to call me brother? The Dharma Supreme laughed and said, Brother Yu, for more than 10,000 years to be treated like this by you, it's really disappointing. Even if you insist on supporting the Tribulation Swordmaster, you don't have to be so ruthless. Yu Lingxue was furious. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly heard a cold voice. Bu Liuqing. Come here and accept your death. Bu Liuqing flew into a rage and shouted, Wu Jueqing, you despicable person. Why, you still want to bully others with your ancestors' power? Let me tell you, I won't fall for it. Poor supreme martial artist Chen Feng, his bloodline is going to end today. Wu Jueqing's cold voice came down. Bu Liuqing, you can't kill anyone with just your mouth. Bu Liuqing laughed. I can't kill anyone, but I can disgust you. I'm happy to disgust you. Ha ha ha, disgust the descendants of Chen Feng and Liu Yun, it's really satisfying. On the other side, Wu Jueqing didn't say anything. However, a substantial murderous aura gradually took form and swept over wildly, covering the skies and covering the earth. Today is Deputy Moderator Tian's birthday. I wish her a happy birthday. However, everyone calls her Dao Dao, and there are some who call her Second Dao, or Jing Dao, Fart Dao. In short, there are many deputy moderators named Dao Dao, and I won't list them all here. In short, I wish her a happy birthday. Every year, there will be a day like this. Brother Aoshua, I'll be happy with you. Brother, happy birthday. Gee, I'll continue to write the 10th update. Gee, to be continued. Chapter 2027. Wu Jueqing's voice was as cold as ice. Come, let's fight. Bu Liuqing snorted and said, come down, I'll fight you. Silence reigned again. Bu Liuqing may be straightforward, but he was definitely not stupid. Today's situation was obviously a trap and a plot. It was one thing for him to come for Ning Tianya's safety, but it definitely didn't mean that he would foolishly step into the enemy's well-planned trap. You want me to go? To be schemed against by you? I want you to come down, Wu Jueqing said indifferently. You don't dare to come? Bu Liuqing crossed his arms and stood at the mountainside. He said arrogantly, do I have to go just because you want me to? Who do you think you are? Why, you don't dare to come down? Wu Jueqing laughed. Don't you want to know about Ning Tianya's news? Bu Liuqing laughed. If old Ning is dead, he will also be dead if I go. If old Ning is still alive, he will still be alive even if I don't go. Wu Jueqing, I only have one motive for coming here today, and that is to kill you. Wu Jueqing sneered. The two parties, one at the mountaintop and the other at the mountainside, were actually in a stalemate. At this moment, the Dharma Supreme laughed coldly. The famous Bu Liuqing, the #1 sword supremacy in the world, actually doesn't dare to come down. He doesn't dare to face the enemy's challenge. And the Moonbreeze couple who dominated the three heavens together actually cowered in the face of the enemy who killed their master. Ha ha, how funny, how funny. Yu Lingshue's expression changed. Bu Liuqing stopped him with his gaze and laughed loudly. One of the famous tribulations, the descendant of two legendary figures in the heavens, not only is he despicable, he actually doesn't dare to come down the mountain for a battle. Does he have no other abilities other than using the name of his ancestors to scare people? After living for tens of thousands of years, he is actually still a good-for-nothing. No wonder he was used by others for a lifetime. He almost became the mud used to mend the heavens. Of course, the most praiseworthy is still the Dharma Supreme of the generation, actually starting to speak sarcastically, using insults to provoke others. Do you have any other ideas? Bu Liuqing mocked him with sarcasm. A long howl from the mountaintop. After living for tens of thousands of years, he is actually still a good-for-nothing? No wonder he had been used by others for an entire lifetime and had almost become the mud used to mend the heavens. These words had really poked at Wu Jueqing's sore spot. He couldn't hold it in any longer and let out a long howl. His white robe fluttered, and his sleeves fluttered. With a loud boom, the accumulated snow on the entire mountain collapsed. At the same time, he flew up. At the same time, his thin, white-clothed silhouette shot down from the mountaintop like a bolt of lightning. Bu Liuqing laughed heartily. You really don't have any self-restraint. It came down on its own. I look down on you. Even though Bu Liuqing said that he was looking down on Wu Jueqing, he had already unsheathed his sword. With the roar of a dragon and a tiger, 10,000 rays of sword light wrapped around Bu Liuqing's body and charged towards Wu Jueqing. With this charge, the flashing sword light was like millions of people unsheathing their swords at the same time. The entire Mount Xingyun resonated with the sound of swords. Clang. Bu Liuqing was furious. Wu Jueqing, who do you think you are? To think that so many supreme martial artists would be sent out to ambush them for a decisive battle. What a disgrace to our ancestors. Wu Jueqing's face and ears turned red. That sword hum just now. It was the sound of the supreme sword being unsheathed and all the swords in the world paying homage to it. Wu Jueqing and the Dharma Supreme had calculated countless possibilities, but they had forgotten about this. This was definitely the will of the heavens. If the battle had already begun and was in full swing, with so many people attacking at once, even if Bu Liuqing scolded, he wouldn't have made Wu Jueqing feel so uncomfortable. Because at that time, everyone would be fighting and facing life-threatening danger at any time. Who would have the time to think about the meaning of this? As for after the battle, the winner would be the king and the loser would be the thief. This was even less of a problem. But the problem was that before the battle had even begun and before both sides had even warmed up, the unsheathed sword of the other side had caused the swords of hundreds of people on their side to hum at the same time. This was like a hard slap on Wu Jueqing's face, extremely painful and unbearable. Yu Lingxue laughed loudly. To think that the two elders, Chen Feng and Liu Yun, were such heroes back then. Who would have thought that their descendants would actually be such characters? This is really a pity. Anger rose in Wu Jueqing's heart. His face flushed red and he chuckled. Then let's sigh more while we still can. Suddenly, he raised his hands and waved them in the air. Instantly, the whole area within a radius of a few hundred miles was filled with colorless and odorless poisonous gas. Then, his white robe fluttered and he pounced on Bu Liuqing. Bu Liuqing's sword shook and suddenly, a mountain appeared out of thin air. A sword mountain. It came crashing down on Wu Jueqing crazily. But once Bu Liuqing made this move, Wu Jueqing instantly knew that he had been deceived by Ning Tianya that day. Because this attack of Bu Liuqing's was not inferior to Ning Tianya's strongest attack that day. That damned Ning Tianya. Wu Jueqing cursed angrily in his heart. If not for the fact that they had such a miraculous item like the sword intent, which greatly exceeded Ning Tianya's expectations, Ning Tianya might really beat them at their own game and use them to deal with them. The sword aura emitted by this attack of Bu Liuqing's made Wu Jueqing feel a little apprehensive. Once an expert made a move, the truth would be known. Wu Jueqing's wrist shook in the air and a long black whip suddenly appeared in the air. It shook against the wind and shattered the thousands of snowflakes in the air along with Bu Liuqing's sword mountain. Sword light shot out. Bu Liuqing swung his sword and it was as if he had split the sky and earth apart. He laughed loudly and said, Wu Jueqing, this attack shall be called Morning Wind Slash. What do you think? Actually, this attack naturally had another name. But Bu Liuqing said it deliberately to provoke Wu Jueqing. Arrogant. Wu Jueqing shouted coldly and lashed out with his whip. The whip's shadows formed many small circles in the air and surrounded Bu Liuqing's sword light. The long whip coiled and intertwined with the long sword. The two of them suddenly changed from attacking from afar to close combat. With a loud bang, Bu Liuqing struck out with his left palm and Wu Jueqing struck out with his right palm. Boom! The snow on the ground flew up violently. Bu Liuqing's sword shook and he flew into the air. Wu Jueqing followed closely behind, his long whip coiling wildly. As expected of a poison doctor, even your attacks are poisonous. Bu Liuqing swung his left hand. Don't put on an act in front of me. With your cultivation, before your protective internal energy is broken, this little poison won't be able to harm you. This little bit of poison won't be able to do anything to you. Wu Jueqing shouted coldly, his attacks becoming fiercer and fiercer. Bu Liuqing laughed loudly. The descendant of Morning Wind is indeed as smart as a child prodigy. Wu Jueqing shut his mouth and stopped talking nonsense with him. He could tell that although this sword supremacy looked cold and ruthless, the moment he opened his mouth, it was a huge fucking shit pit. Bickering with him could really infuriate one to death. Bu Liuqing attacked the enemy relentlessly with his words, but he had his own plans in mind. As he fought. At the same time, he observed the surrounding terrain to see where he could set up an ambush. He could strike at any time and kill a few people to warm up his hand. If he killed too many people, an ambush would no longer be an ambush. But when he looked around, he didn't discover anything. If it wasn't for the sword chime earlier that told him that there were too many enemies here, he might have thought that there was no one here. Where did they hide? Thoughts flashed through Bu Liuqing's mind, but his sword didn't relax at all. He exchanged blow after blow with Wu Jueqing. In terms of internal energy cultivation, Bu Liuqing was inferior to Wu Jueqing. There was no doubt that he was inferior by more than a level. However, at this moment, he actually did not fall into a disadvantageous position. From the start of the battle until now, the two of them had been fighting in the air 100 feet high. They didn't go higher or lower. If they went higher, they would match what they said earlier. It was Bu Liuqing who listened to Wu Jueqing and went up. But if they went lower, Wu Jueqing would be at a disadvantage. So the two of them fought at a height that was neither too high nor too low. Bu Liuqing let out a long laugh. He flicked his sword and a dragon-like roar sounded. He mocked, "The descendant of Morning Wind is nothing more than this. The tribulation of tens of thousands of years is nothing more than this." Wu Jueqing was fuming with anger. It was because Ning Tianya had said the same thing when he intercepted him that day. And not only was every word the same, even the tone was the same. How could Wu Jueqing not be angry? This meant that these two fellows didn't care about Morning Wind at all. Otherwise, they wouldn't have said the same thing. Just as he was about to attack, he saw Bu Liuqing retreating abruptly. With a roll of his body, the sword light trembled and transformed into a brilliant rainbow. The sword light was like a barrel. It was several feet thick, but its length seemed to be endless. Bu Liuqing's whole body was hidden in the sword light. He flew over like a rainbow. Man and sword as one. Wu Jueqing snorted. His long whip danced in the air and shook. With a loud bang, a black epiphyllum suddenly appeared. Wu Jueqing shouted and pushed with both hands. This black epiphyllum welcomed Bu Liuqing's man and sword as one. Then, the long whip shook and the black epiphyllum flew out one by one. Epiphyllum pistol. This was obviously an ultimate sword technique, but it was used by Wu Jueqing with a whip of a different nature. And its power didn't decrease but increased instead. Bu Liuqing sneered. Epiphyllum pistol can't stop the sword supremacy. Just like that, the epiphyllum broke under his sword one after another. Wu Jueqing raised his whip and used it as a sword. Similarly, he used the man and sword as one and rushed forward. He sneered. "Sword supremacy? You're not worthy." The two of them collided with a loud bang. Wu Jueqing did a roll and somersaulted 17 to 18 times in the air, reaching a height of 400 to 500 feet. Bu Liuqing, on the other hand, floated out at an angle. His green robes left a white mark in the wind. Wu Jueqing snorted and was about to use his sword intent. He purposely used a battle method that he wasn't good at to fight Bu Liuqing just for this moment. Just as he was about to attack, he suddenly felt a gust of wind behind him and a murderous aura. Startled, he hurriedly dashed out. With a thud, Wu Jueqing's shoulder was hit. His white robes were torn and blood flowed out. His calf was hit and blood dripped out. He hurriedly circulated his energy to stop it, but his face was already full of anger and astonishment. Sword light flashed and the Moonbreeze couple attacked at the same time, attacking Wu Jueqing with their two swords as one. Just now, it was actually the husband and wife who joined forces to launch a sneak attack. Be it Wu Jueqing, the Dharma Supreme or even Bu Liuqing, they were all greatly surprised by this. No one would have thought that the Moonbreeze couple, who had always been known for their gentlemanly demeanor, would actually launch a sneak attack. Yu Lingshue's expression was calm. Only you guys are allowed to set up despicable traps, but I'm not allowed to launch a sneak attack. What kind of logic is this? 10 chapters. If you can imagine what I look like now, I'll call you brothers. 7 packs of cigarettes and a box and a half of Red Bull in 2 days and 2 nights. But, 10 chapters. Got it. Begging for votes. A very crazy begging. To be continued. Chapter 2028. Zhuge Changchang looked a little pitiful. He looked at Chu Yang expectantly. He knew that his life was now in Chu Yang's hands. And Shuhai Pavilion and G. Web. Where is my third uncle now? Once Chu Yang heard Zhuge Changchang say to buy medicine for his daughter, he knew that this news was definitely true. If not for Chu Yang, the Zhuge clan wouldn't even pay attention to Chu Feihan, a small fry in their eyes. In the dungeon of the Zhuge clan, Zhuge Changchang hurriedly replied, "Don't worry, he's not dead." Chu Yang's eyes were sharp. "Was he tortured by you?" Zhuge Changchang hesitated for a while and said, "Brother Chu, you also know that this is unavoidable when you first enter. However, we have already instructed that no matter what, his life is not to be harmed." Chu Yang chuckled coldly. His heart ached. He knew that since Zhuge Changchang said so, Chu Feihan must have been tortured badly. Otherwise, Zhuge Changchang wouldn't have explained so hurriedly. A thin figure seemed to appear in front of him. For his daughter's illness, he was in the prime of his life and had been running around in the wilderness for many years. Whenever he found treasures, even if he didn't need them, he would quickly keep them and exchange them for purple crystals. However, he couldn't bear to spend a single cent. He saved them to buy medicine for his daughter. As long as he heard that there was medicine, he would rush over at full speed. Day after day, year after year. For his daughter, he was tired just to give his daughter a healthy body. He carried a slim and almost impossible hope and traveled all over the world. How much did he suffer? Did anyone know? Now, for his daughter's medicine, he came all the way to Tianji City. However, because of a nephew that appeared out of nowhere, he was imprisoned by the Zhuge clan and suffered all kinds of torture. Chu Le finally couldn't take it anymore. She suddenly burst into tears. Good. What a Zhuge clan. It's really a big clan in name. What a righteous method. What an upright scheme. Good. Really good. Chu Yang laughed coldly and said word by word, "I'll remember this." He shouted, "Zhuge Changchang. Why aren't you sealing your cultivation and getting over here? Do you want me to do it myself?" Zhuge Changchang finally let out a sigh of relief. He knew that his life was finally saved. At this moment, how could he still be angry and care about the other party's tone? He hastily sealed his cultivation and sat on the ground with a puff. He said, "Brother Chu, I can help you save your third uncle. And Shuhage and G. Net." Chu Yang glanced at him in disdain. He really didn't want to say anything more to such a person. With a wave of his hand, Dong Wushang sealed this guy's cultivation again. He tied him up with a rope and threw him into the room with a thud. Zhuge let out a long cry of pain. Dong Wushang's technique was indeed much cruder than the average person's. "Big brother. You have to save my father." Chu Le wiped her tears. The more she thought about it, the sadder she felt. "He has suffered so much for me." Chu Yang felt as if something was stuck in his throat. He said heavily, "Don't worry. I will definitely save third uncle." The battle had ended, and everyone felt more relaxed. Although Chu Feihan's matter had covered everyone's hearts with a layer of dark clouds, They had finally overcome the biggest crisis. The rarest thing was that no one was injured, and this made them even more overjoyed. Meng Chaoran stood at the door, stroking his beard and smiling. Mo Qingwu had already rushed out of the room, grumbling non-stop. If you knew that it would be so easy, why didn't you let me out? You even gave me a mission. Only now did she know that the mission didn't need anyone to carry it out. Mo Lei and Wu Qianqian both laughed at her words. Looking at the little girl's pouting mouth and rolling eyes, they were all overjoyed. At this moment, someone called out lightly, "You are Chu Yang?" Chu Yang turned around abruptly. He only felt a huge pressure coming towards him. The wind fox, which had just jumped from Chu Yang's shoulder to Mo Qingwu's arms, felt all its fur stand on end. It looked ahead with some fear in its eyes. Dong Wushang's hand was on the hilt of his saber. Rui Butong also grasped the short sword in his arms. Behind everyone, there was a man in black. His entire body was covered in black, only revealing two eyes. Shuhai Ge and Ji, Net. His eyes were old and sharp as he looked at everyone. He just stood there with his hands behind his back in the snow 100 feet away. But in everyone's senses, there was no such person at all. Everyone was shocked. This person was definitely an expert. And even if he wasn't on the level of the Moonbreeze couple, he definitely wasn't too far off. How could such a person suddenly appear now that the battle had just ended? Chu Yang's pupils shrank. Although this person had restrained his aura, Chu Yang could still feel this person's strength and hostility, as well as a kind of vague murderous aura. This person was an enemy. Chu Yang instantly made a judgment. He took a step forward and opened his arms slightly, protecting everyone behind him. Then, he took another 2 steps forward and asked warily, "Who are you?" At the same time, he summoned the sword spirit and quickly possessed him. This person was so strong that even if everyone present were to fight together, they would definitely not be his match. There was admiration in this person's eyes. He said, "Chu Yang, not bad indeed. No wonder you have the prestige and power you have today. As the leader, it's already not easy for you to be able to sense danger immediately. You being able to protect yourself in front of your brothers after sensing danger is even more admirable. A person like you indeed has the ability to make people loyal to you." Chu Yang frowned and said, "You haven't answered my question." With his hands behind his back, this person said indifferently, "Does it matter whether I answer or not?" Chu Yang took a deep breath and said, "It does indeed matter." This mysterious person's eyes revealed a smile like spring water, but it was the spring water that had experienced the vicissitudes of life. He said indifferently, "Don't worry, there's no need to be so nervous. Today, I originally only wanted to see you, but after seeing you, I decided to kill you. Because you're too outstanding. Keeping you alive is really too big of a threat." Chu Yang smiled faintly. "It's not as easy to kill me as you think." As he spoke, the sword spirit had already possessed him. The calamity sword appeared in his hand with a clang. Then, Chu Yang turned into a long rainbow and flew up from the ground. He crossed hundreds of feet and shot over. This person was strong and invincible. This was the sword spirit's warning. But Chu Yang had no other choice. Because he knew that as long as he hesitated, his brothers would attack. And attacking would only be courting death. He couldn't retreat. If he retreated, his brothers would risk their lives to block this person and create time for him to escape. His brothers would still die. So, if Chu Yang wanted to leave, there was only one way left. Break through head-on and flee far away. Only Dong Wushang and the others were left. With this person's identity, if he said he wouldn't kill, he would definitely not kill. Besides, his main target was Chu Yang. If he chased after Chu Yang, Dong Wushang, Mo Qingwu and the others would be even safer. Of course, all of this was based on the fact that Chu Yang could successfully escape. The sword turned into a rainbow. The mysterious black-robed man's eyes were filled with admiration. His body floated up in the air. He slammed his palm on the calamity sword. Chu Yang's body, controlled by the sword spirit, shook violently and spat out a mouthful of blood. The black-robed man's eyes narrowed. "Supreme martial artist cultivation? So you're a 7th grade sword saint. You're still hiding your strength. He slammed his palm on the sword again. Although he didn't use much time to speak, compared to the speed of the sword spirit's sword, he still used a lot more time. But after he finished speaking, he slammed his palm again and was actually able to hit the fleeting sword again. In this situation, the extreme contradiction between fast and slow made everyone who saw it feel so uncomfortable that they wanted to vomit blood. Chu Yang's body shook again and he spat out another mouthful of blood. He turned around and was about to pass by him. But the black-robed man retreated lightly and blocked him again. He slammed his palm again. The sword spirit was shocked again. This person had already grasped the laws of space. Right at this moment, a furious roar was heard. A sharp black light turned into a thunderbolt. Dong Wushang raised his dark saber and rushed over madly. At this moment, Dong Wushang activated all of his life's potential without regard for anything and released the most powerful saber attack of his life so far. He didn't speak, but he used his heart, his soul, his spirit, his strength, his will, his everything. It all melted into this saber attack. Good saber. The black-robed man's eyes were filled with admiration again. At the same time, Rui Butong also rushed up like lightning and pounced on the black-robed man. Red light surrounded Mo Qingwu's red sleeves and light saber slashed fiercely. Before her, a white shadow shot out like lightning and went straight for the black-robed man. It was the wind fox. The sword light was clear and bright. Wu Qianqian and Mo Lei attacked from the left and right respectively. Obviously, Wu Qianqian was much faster than Mo Lei. A sword light followed behind. Meng Chaoran rushed over on his sword. Chu Le-er's petite body flew into the air. For the first time in her life, she took the initiative to attack the enemy. In an instant, 8 people and a spirit beast attacked at the same time. The black-robed man's eyes were filled with disdain and he punched out. It hit the blade of Dong Wushang's black saber. With a snap, the black saber broke from the middle. Dong Wushang's sternum caved in and he spat out blood and flew backward. At the same time, his left fist hit the wind fox. The wind fox screamed and fell from the sky. With a light flick of his fingers, a few sharp gusts of wind were released. Mo Lei groaned and a few bloody holes appeared on her shoulders and legs. She fell from the sky. With a kick, Mo Qingwu and her saber were kicked more than 100 feet away. All of this happened at the same time. Rui Butong pounced from behind. The black-robed man sneered and kicked. It hit Rui Butong's lower abdomen. Rui Butong cried out and his internal organs shattered. He spat out a mouthful of blood, but he hugged the black-robed man's left leg with all his might. The black-robed man's leg shook slightly and was about to throw him out. But at this moment, Rui Butong suddenly lowered his head and his sharp teeth bit into his calf fiercely. Fourth watch. Begging for votes. Chapter 2029. Chu Yang spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, he spat out 3 more mouthfuls of boiling red blood. The world spun around him. He vaguely saw a black-clothed figure in front of him. Her clothes were as black as ink, slender and elegant. Her features were picturesque and peerless. It was Wu Qianqian. Wu Qianqian stood in front of him just like that, looking at him with resentment and reluctance. It was as if she wanted to reach out and touch his face but couldn't. It was as if she wanted to throw herself into his arms but was getting further and further away. Chu Yang, I'm leaving. You must be happy. Vaguely, Wu Qianqian seemed to be calling out to him. She seemed to be wholeheartedly blessing him with her soul power. Chu Yang spat out another mouthful of blood. For a moment, his heart ached as if he was dying. His heart was bleak. In the tribulation space, the sword spirit shouted angrily, "Heaven-nourishing jade! Heaven-nourishing jade!" Chu Yang was perplexed. At? The sword spirit shouted angrily, "Use the heaven-nourishing jade quickly. If you don't use it now, when her body is no longer soft, she will really die." Heaven-nourishing jade. Chu Yang suddenly realized. His mind had been too agitated that he had forgotten about the heaven-nourishing jade. He tried hard to clear his mind but was still a little dazed. In a moment of desperation, he grabbed the broken sword on the ground and stabbed it into his thigh. The bone-piercing pain jolted him awake. How do I use the heaven-nourishing jade? Put it in her mouth first to protect her life and soul, the sword spirit said anxiously. Chu Yang hurriedly reached into the tribulation space and realized that his arm was still broken. He couldn't care less. He corrected his bones and took out the heaven-nourishing jade. He took out the largest piece and sent it toward Wu Qianqian's mouth. But Wu Qianqian's lips were tightly shut and she couldn't swallow it. He watched as the heaven-nourishing jade shone and slowly melted beside her lips. Chu Yang's heart was burning with anxiety. He suddenly lowered his head and held the heaven-nourishing jade in his mouth. He brought it close to Wu Qianqian's lips and blew the pure life force from the heaven-nourishing jade into Wu Qianqian's mouth through the tiny gap between her teeth. Then, he was afraid that after this, he would share the spiritual energy of the heaven-nourishing jade. Wu Qianqian couldn't recover, so he took another piece and fed it to her. When he was about to take the third piece, the sword spirit hurriedly said with heartache, "Enough, enough, there's no need for so much. She'll explode." Only then did Chu Yang stop. Then, he hurriedly healed his broken hand and activated the heavenly god technique. At the same time, he quickly took out the incomplete version of the heavy pill and handed it to Meng Chaoran so that he could give one to everyone who was injured. Then, Chu Yang began to wait. He waited for Wu Qianqian to wake up. The battle just now seemed to have lasted for a long time, but in truth, everything happened in the blink of an eye. It was just the beginning. It was already over. There's only one enemy. But, everyone on our side is seriously injured except for Meng Chaoran who's further away. The danger of this battle was far greater than any of the great battles that Chu Yang had experienced since his debut. This was also Chu Yang. This was his first time facing a supreme martial artist. Furthermore, it was his first time facing an intermediate supreme martial artist. The difference in strength was like heaven and earth. They couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. Mo Leier's injuries were considered light, but Dong Wushang's injuries were very serious. Although he wouldn't lose his life, if he didn't have the incomplete version of the heavy pill, Dong Wushang would probably never be able to recover after today. Mo Qingwu fought with her life on the line twice and was still unconscious now. Chu Le was patted by the black-robed man from afar and couldn't stand up at all. The winged fox limped onto Mo Qingwu's body, moaning softly. Its big black eyes were full of pain. With a thud, Rui Butong, who had been kicked into the air, finally fell back down. He fell onto the ground like a pile of mud. Chu Yang and Dong Wushang were naturally not worried about this guy. Rui Butong was the least worrisome one. An immortal body. Every time he died, his strength would increase instead. Instead, it was the injured people who were more troublesome. After waiting for a while, Wu Qianqian still hadn't woken up. Although her body remained soft, there were no signs of life. Chu Yang became anxious and asked the sword spirit, "When will she wake up? How long will this heaven-nourishing jade take effect?" "Damn it, what are you bragging about? I thought it was even more miraculous than the heavy pill, but it's not even as good as the heavy pill." The sword spirit rolled his eyes and said, "Even if you are worried about Wu Qianqian, you don't have to belittle the heaven-nourishing jade like this. The heaven-nourishing jade has already taken effect. Wu Qianqian's primordial spirit can be considered to have been preserved and won't die for now. But how can it be easy for her to recover to her original state? How can it be done with just this heaven-nourishing jade? Do you still need something else?" Chu Yang asked, "What do you need?" "The heaven-nourishing jade is already a heaven-defying item. As long as a person is dead and the body hasn't stiffened, the heaven-nourishing jade can preserve the spirit. Even if the person has been dead for 2 hours, the heaven-nourishing jade can still gather the spirit and capture it. In other words, although Wu Qianqian isn't breathing now and has no heartbeat, her spirit is still in her body. Even if you can't find a way to save her, her body won't rot even after thousands of years. As long as the conditions are coincidentally met, she can still wake up," the sword spirit said. "You just need to say what you need to wake her up. That will do." Chu Yang looked at Wu Qianqian's pale face with heartache. He said impatiently, "Why are you so naggy about the rest? You need the resurrection grass." The sword spirit hurriedly said a name. Resurrection grass? Chu Yang's eyes lit up. Where can I find this? The sword spirit heaved a long sigh. The Heaven Imperial Court. Chu Yang was stunned. After a long while, he scolded like a volcano erupting. Fuck. Isn't this fucking making things difficult for me? With my current cultivation level, when will I be able to go up to the Heavenly Imperial Court? When you can go up, that's your problem. But you have to go up eventually. The sword spirit said indifferently, what I need to remind you is that if you can find the resurrection grass and use it together with the heaven-nourishing jade, then once Wu Qianqian comes back to life, she will be immortal. The sword spirit blinked and looked at Chu Yang. Did you see Rui Butong's phoenix body? Birth, old age, sickness, and death are the cycles of heaven. The heaven-nourishing jade can reverse life and death. Therefore, the peak power of the heaven-nourishing jade is a heaven-defying power. Why is there a heaven-defying power? It's the power of Tao. Only the power of the great Tao can be heaven-defying. And the resurrection grass, as the name suggests, can bring one's soul back to life. Together with the heaven-defying power, it is the cycle of reincarnation. It must not harm the body. Chu Yang calmed down. After thinking carefully, he said with a cold smile, based on what you said, Qianqian's current state is a blessing. Instead, it's her fate. The sword spirit did not deny it. Not everyone can obtain the heaven-defying power of the heaven-nourishing jade. And the heaven-defying power of the heaven-nourishing jade is refined by the heaven-defying calamity sword master. Since the beginning of time, only you, and only you, will be able to do it. The sword spirit said, now that things have come to this, I might as well make it clear. You didn't die in the tribulation of life and death. You were destroyed in accordance with heaven and reborn in defiance of heaven. After you, there will be no more calamity sword or calamity sword master in this world. Therefore, your heaven-nourishing jade. It's one of a kind in the world. Wu Qianqian deserved to die, but she was kept by the heaven-nourishing jade. She only needs the resurrection grass to revive. After she revives, she cannot die in this tribulation of life and death. The sword spirit said lightly, and, actually, from this moment onwards. Then you will have truly walked into your own destiny. My own destiny? Chu Yang asked, perplexed. That's right, your own destiny. The sword spirit said solemnly, before this, you didn't know that there's always someone better than you. But Zi Sheqing appeared, so you know. You and Zi Sheqing have feelings for each other. You have an agreement at the Heavenly Imperial Court. But your determination is not firm. You just want to laugh proudly at the heavens with your brothers. That is already your life's work. Therefore, it's not impossible for you to give up. It's even possible that your conviction is not firm enough and you can't fulfill your promise with Zi Sheqing. But at this moment, I'm telling you that if you give up, it's equivalent to giving up on your brothers. Therefore, you can only move forward. But at this moment, you only know how to protect, but you still don't know the direction you're fighting for. But at this moment, Wu Qianqian's death has shown you the right direction, which is the Heavenly Imperial Court. Only in the Heavenly Imperial Court will there be resurrection grass. The sword spirit said, when you reach the Heavenly Imperial Court, you will naturally know all the answers to these mysteries. That's the real mission of the Tribulation Sword Master. The sword spirit said word by word, Yin and Yang must cherish the beauty is not just a poem. Resurrection after death is going against the heavens. The heavens are the darkness, the earth is the darkness. This is Yin and Yang. Cherishing each other in life and death is Yin and Yang cherishing the beauty. Without experiencing life and death, do you know how to cherish her? Chu Yang was silent. You only knew how to cherish Mo Qingwu when you lost her in your previous life. You only knew how to cherish Wu Qianqian after you lost her in this life. But why do you only know how to cherish something after you lose it? You also cherish your brothers now, but I dare to bet that if one of them dies now, you will cherish the others even more in the future. This is actually not good. Only regretting it when you lose it proves that you didn't do enough when you had it. The sword spirit said word by word. He stared intently at Chu Yang. Isn't it good to cherish it when you have it? Chu Yang's countenance changed and he suddenly looked up. Only knowing how to cherish it when you lose it is the weak, the common people. Cherishing it when you have it is the wise man, the strong. The sword spirit smiled slightly. Here, it's not only referring to women, but also brothers, sisters, parents, relatives, cultivation, or mission, or enemies. Also, personal integrity, perseverance. Cherish everything that can be cherished, and you will be able to obtain everything that can be obtained. Chapter 2030. Everyone fell silent. Thinking of the great battle just now, everyone still had some lingering fear. Chu Yong briefly recounted what happened. When he reached the end, Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro exchanged a look, seeing the doubt in each other's eyes. Black-robed man? Who was that? According to Chu Yong's description, even if this person's cultivation was slightly lower than theirs, it was not by much. There was such an expert in Tianji City now? Could it be the founder of the Zhuge clan, Zhuge Tsangqiong? Feng Yuro pondered and said, on the surface, there seems to be only one middle-grade supreme martial artist in Tianji City now. Yu Lingxue frowned and said, this is possible, but also not very likely. Everyone knows that the reason why the Zhuge clan wears hemp clothes is because of Zhuge Tsangqiong. Back then, Zhuge Tsangqiong's father, as Tribulation, immediately disappeared for no reason after establishing the Zhuge clan. Later on, news spread that he was dead. However, no one knew if he was alive or dead. As a human, Zhuge Tsangqiong did not go through mourning in time and had always been brooding over it. From then on, Zhuge Tsangqiong only wore hemp mourning clothes for his entire life. As the clan leader, Zhuge Tsangqiong still did this. Naturally, the clansmen followed suit. As time passed, the hemp mourning clothes became the symbol of the Zhuge clan. Back then, Zhuge Tsangqiong once said, as long as one's life lasts, so does filial piety. For 10,000 years, he has never worn any other clothes. Yu Lingxue frowned. Logically speaking, such filial piety. If he suddenly came dressed in black to ambush Chu Yang and the others, it would be somewhat unreasonable. Feng Yuro nodded repeatedly. At the side, Mo Lei was extremely amused. She sneered and said, what the two seniors said, I feel that it is very wrong. It is understandable that Zhuge Tsangqiong did this from then on. However, another possibility cannot be ruled out. That is, the whole world knows that Zhuge Tsangqiong is a filial person who will always wear hemp clothes. Therefore, no matter what happens, no one will suspect him. But in this way, it is greatly convenient for Zhuge Tsangqiong to do things secretly. Just like now, the two seniors have ruled out Zhuge Tsangqiong as the first one. To a certain extent, this means that they have trusted him. Mo Lei said, and he is our enemy now. If you believe in the enemy, you've already brought yourself to the path of defeat. But in the current Tianji city, other than the experts left behind by the Zhuge clan to look after the house, there are almost no other supreme martial artists. Yet at this time, a mid-grade supreme martial artist has appeared. Even if it is ultimately proven that Zhuge Tsangqiong is not the culprit, he is still the biggest suspect right now. How can we eliminate him so easily? The Moon Breeze couple fell silent. Everyone nodded. They had to admit that what Mo Lei said made sense. Make the best use of your time to recuperate in these few days. Yu Lingxue said, when your injuries have fully recovered, I will bring you all out of Tianji City. He rolled his eyes and said faintly, as long as the news of us being heavily injured doesn't spread out, as long as they know that we are here, no one in the entire heavenly layer would dare to cause trouble. Everyone smiled and nodded. Yu Lingxue really wasn't boasting. The Dharma Supreme was beaten until his whereabouts were unknown. Wu Jueqing was here, half dead. Bu Liuqing had left. Ning Tianya was seriously injured and had gone into hiding. The 8 second grandmasters had died an unnatural death. In the entire heavens, Moon Breeze was truly invincible, of course, under the circumstances where they didn't know that they were already heavily injured. At this moment, a furious voice came from outside. Fuck. All of you are still alive, but you didn't care about me. I was already beaten to a pulp and you still threw me into the snow. It's fine if you threw me into the snow, but you actually threw me beside the toilet. Who did it? Who? Dong Wushang, was it you? Come out, I'll teach you a lesson. It was Rui Butong's voice. Master Rui was incredible now. He died 3 times in a day. The first time he died, he came back alive and his cultivation jumped from 5th grade Martial Saint to 7th grade Martial Saint. The second time he died, he came back alive and his cultivation actually became 2nd grade. And now, the third time he died and became a pulp, he came back alive and kicking. He was actually a 1st grade supreme martial artist. This kind of leveling up method was really unprecedented. The door curtain was lifted and Master Rui walked in casually. When he saw the Moon Breeze couple, he instantly shrank and rubbed his hands. "Ah, the two of you are here too." "Hihi," Yu Lingxue rolled his eyes. "I heard that you are blaming us for not caring about you." "Very unhappy," Rui Butong said obsequiously. No. Did I say that? We share life and death, fortune and misfortune, in the same boat, in life and death. Why would I say something like that? Wouldn't it hurt everyone's feelings if I said it? A person who says something like that is practically a bird's egg. Chu Yang, Dong Wushang and Mo Leia couldn't help but laugh. This guy really dared to say that. But, from a certain point of view, this guy was really just a bird's egg. Yu Lingxue snorted and said, "Since you know that you are a bird's egg, why don't you sit obediently at the side?" Rui Butong repeatedly agreed and sat down obediently. Everyone was full of admiration. Yu Lingxue was like an experiment using Rui Butong as an experiment. Even though he was a little tired now and his injuries couldn't be concealed, he was able to suppress Rui Butong with just his accumulated power. And this was someone he knew. If he wasn't, what would happen? After Rui Butong sat down, it was as if a scorpion was stuffed in his butt. He twisted and turned, unable to contain the excitement in his heart. He couldn't help but be excited. All along, he had been the weakest among the brothers, and also the youngest. But now, he had a complete turnaround. He was the first to reach the supreme martial artist level. Among the others, Chu Yang and Dong Wushang, who were the highest, were still hovering around the 7th grade. How could Rui Butong not be complacent? At this moment, he couldn't wait to call Jiyu Duxing up and scold him to his face, and then really beat that guy up. Call Jimo and Luo Kedi up and give them a good beating to vent the depression of being bullied for a long time. Of course, he even wanted to beat up Dong Wushang and then look for Chu Yang to challenge his position as the boss, but before he could do it, he was suppressed by Yu Lingxue. He was a little unhappy. After twisting for a while, he winked and said, "Boss, I broke through again." "Hehe," Chu Yang said indifferently. "Oh." Rui Butong was startled. Since he did not get the surprised reaction he expected, he did not give up and continued to show off. "Boss, do you know what level I've reached?" "Hehe, 1st grade supreme martial artist." Chu Yang said indifferently, "Oh, continue to work hard." Rui Butong was depressed. What kind of reaction was this? When I broke through in the past, everyone was very surprised and very happy. Why was the reaction so dull this time? His face turned ashen. Unwilling to give up, he said to Dong Wushang, 4th brother, "I've broken through to the supreme martial artist level." Dong Wushang suppressed his laughter and scolded, "What's so great about breaking through? What's there to show off about being a 1st grade supreme martial artist? Just look at how immature you are. How can you achieve great things with this kind of mentality? Isn't it just a small breakthrough? Bastard, you're simply a villain intoxicated by success. Your ugly face is disgusting. Get out and get wet in the snow." Rui Butong was flabbergasted, his lips trembling. You. He turned to Chu Yang for help. "Boss, look," Chu Yang shouted angrily, "get out." Rui Butong was like a frosted cigar at once. He hung his head dejectedly, only feeling that the joy of breaking through several levels just now was gone. He walked out dejectedly, muttering in confusion, "What's going on? Something's not right." He had just walked out of the door when he heard deafening laughter in the room. Like a whirlwind, Rui Butong rushed in again. He said angrily, "Great, you're messing with me." Everyone was even more overjoyed. Everyone had long seen Rui Butong's smug look. His breakthrough was indeed amazing. However, they all deliberately kept a straight face and didn't reveal anything. Chu Yang and Dong Wushang were even more stern as they threw this little guy out with a big hot fart. Only now did they laugh. In the room, the atmosphere after the big battle was relaxed. On the bed, Wu Jueqing, who was unconscious with his eyes closed, suddenly let out a faint sigh. Looking at Chu Yang and his brothers laughing and joking, Wu Jueqing couldn't help but think of his brothers back then. For a moment, he couldn't help but think of the past, his soul wandering to the heavens. Brothers, where are you? Wu Jueqing lay quietly, listening to the other brothers laughing and joking. He only felt more and more lonely, a wave of depression and anger rising in his heart. I will avenge all of you. Definitely. Dharma Supreme, you despicable villain, we were both once tribulations and had the same experience. How dare you plot against me too? I won't let you off. Regarding this, Wu Jueqing still couldn't understand even now. The Dharma Supreme had the same goal as him. Keeping him alive was much more helpful than killing him. Why did he plot against him? What good would it do the Dharma Supreme if he died completely in that great array? Other than losing a powerful helper, there really wasn't any benefit at all. As for why he was afraid that he would compete with him. But it had been so many years. If he wanted to compete, the Dharma Supreme wouldn't be able to win against him no matter what. They hadn't competed for so many years, what was he worried about? Wu Jueqing was extremely puzzled. With a moan, Mo Qingwu woke up. She called out, Chu Yang, Chu Yang. The moment she opened her eyes and saw everyone, she was overjoyed. You're all right? That's great. When the little girl heard what happened just now, she couldn't help but burst into tears. She stayed by Wu Qianqian's side, refusing to leave no matter what. I want to take care of Sister Qianqian and thank her personally. As long as she doesn't wake up, I'll take care of her. Mo Qingwu wiped her tears and said, she saved my big brother Chu Yang. I'm so grateful to her. Sister Qianqian, quickly wake up. When you wake up, I'll give you half of Chu Yang. This sentence made Feng Yuro and Yu Lingxue laugh. Half of a person could be given away. I have a lot of things to say to all of you. Wait for me to finish updating and post a single chapter. Begging for votes. To be continued. Tilda. Chapter 2031. In the next few days, everyone was recuperating. Chu Yang also tried his best to treat everyone's injuries. Everyone's injuries were very serious. Especially the Moonbreeze couple. Their injuries were even more serious. Chu Yang tried his best but could only alleviate their injuries slightly. He couldn't help them recover. Dong Wushang, Mo Lei and Mo Qingwu's injuries were considered more serious. For something like serious injuries, for example, being injured by a sovereign and being injured by a supreme martial artist were two completely different concepts. Although they were of the same strength, the injuries of a supreme martial artist would naturally carry the divine consciousness of a supreme martial artist. That was a more subtle form of destruction. Especially for the spirit and meridians, the damage was even more serious and not easy to recover. And this time, it was a low-grade supreme martial artist who did it. The damage was even greater. Therefore, the recovery of everyone's injuries this time was especially slow. The one with the most serious injuries was, of course, Wu Jueqing. Wu Jueqing's injuries had already reached the point where even the sword spirit was somewhat helpless. Chu Yang had once thought of using the heaven-nourishing jade but was stopped by the sword spirit. The heaven-nourishing jade could only be used to its fullest potential after a person died. Heaven-nourishing, as the name implied, the heaven that needed to be nourished must have already collapsed. If the heaven didn't collapse, why did it need to be nourished? And Wu Jueqing was obviously still breathing now. If he really waited until he was no longer breathing before using the heaven-nourishing jade, Wu Jueqing would also fall into a long deep sleep like Wu Qianqian. He would only wake up when he reached the resurrection grass. The only thing Chu Yang could do now was to use medicine to temporarily stabilize Wu Jueqing's injuries. As for the rest, he could only rely on his own strength to slowly recover. Only then could he talk about other things. Because he definitely couldn't use heavy pills on Wu Jueqing. Once he did, it would be equivalent to exposing his identity immediately. There were really too many variables. Chu Yang couldn't afford such variables at all now. In these few days, Tianji City was in a state of grief. After the Battle of Mount Xingyun, the people of the Zhuge clan waited for a long time and did not see anyone return. Thus, they sent people to Mount Xingyun to check. What they saw scared the hell out of the few people who went to check it out. Mount Xingyun was full of corpses. People of the big clans all died here. When the news came back, the Zhuge clan was shocked. Quite a number of people were dispatched. Xiao Chen went to Mount Xingyun to retrieve the corpse. Then, he quickly reported the news to the other great clans. The entire heavenly layer continent was filled with worry and misery. Every family in the great clans was in mourning, including the Li clan. Li Xiangxi of the Li clan led his men all the way back to the north and encountered countless interceptions along the way. In the end, only Li Xiangxi was able to successfully return to the Li clan. There were only 5 people left. The Li clan flew into a rage and swore to take revenge. Diwu clan. Diwu Qing Ru's small courtyard. The people we sent were also wiped out. No survivors. Diwu Qing Ru's expression revealed shock. This matter was no small matter. The Diwu clan did not have a strong foundation at the moment. They had been seconded 5 supreme martial artists at once. This drained half of the power of the Diwu family. How could Diwu Qingru not be shocked by the fact that the entire army was at Mount Xingyun? Another heartache. Yes. The wrinkles on the old man's face seemed to have deepened. Amazing. Diwu Qingru sighed. I didn't expect them to have such formidable strength. But Sir had clearly agreed. He wanted to help that Chu Yang and also told him about the clothes of our men. They even killed all of our men. They are really ungrateful, the old man said angrily. Diwu Qingru was silent for a while and said, there was actually no wu on the clothes of those people. The old man was instantly dumbfounded. Their wu character is inside their outer robes, but above their inner robes. Diwu Qingru's following words made the old man even more shocked. Then, why, this? The old man was a little incoherent. Diwu Qingru's expression was complicated. You thought that I was really helping Chu Yang. In fact, what I really helped him with was those few pieces of information. And Chu Yang also understood, Diwu Qingru said lightly. Chu Yang thanked me for those few pieces of information but appeared very indifferent towards the most important one, Diwu Qingru said slowly. He also had hope but didn't fully believe it. May I know the reason why Sir did this? The old man asked. Diwu Qingru smiled bitterly. Because our Diwu clan can't afford to lose. In fact, in this battle, we were actually trying to gain advantages from both sides. If the big clans win, then they don't need to expose their identities. If the big clans lose, they only need to tear their clothes and reveal the wu, then they can save their lives. If they are evenly matched, then they can also tear their clothes and reveal the wu to guide them to escape. Then, it will be helpful. For this battle, I had 3 plans. No matter what, I had to protect the supreme martial artists of our clan. Diwu Qingru let out a long sigh. I didn't expect that after all my scheming, I still couldn't save them. The old man beside him was completely stunned. If so, wouldn't Chu Yang have been deceived for nothing? This was too sinister, wasn't it? Besides, after Chu Yang left, you told me that kind of argument. Wouldn't you have deceived me too? Diwu Qingru saw through his thoughts and said slowly, I didn't deceive you, but it was snowing heavily at that time. I was afraid that Chu Yang wouldn't go far and would come back to eavesdrop. Indeed. Then it would really be bad. The old man suddenly felt relieved. Besides, on Chu Yang's side, you can't guess Chu Yang's thoughts. Even if he is skeptical, he will still make arrangements. Diwu Qingru chuckled. If not, he wouldn't be Chu Yang. It's just that I didn't expect things to be so bad. Diwu Qingru let out a long sigh. Let's take the bodies back to the clan and bury them grandly. In the future, we can only take one step at a time. Fortunately, there is no clear falling out with Chu Yang's side. He sighed softly. Let's see what Chu Yang does in a few days' time. Diwu Qingru was right. As for the experts prepared by the Diwu clan, Chu Yang was a little skeptical at first. Later, when he was 70 to 80% convinced, he suddenly thought, on the surface, I am weak. Diwu Qingru's move has greatly exposed the suspicion of the Diwu clan. It is so obvious that the other clans can't see it. Once they see it, my side will break out of the encirclement and be safe, but the Diwu clan will definitely be destroyed. Diwu Qingru wouldn't be so noble as to sacrifice himself for others, let alone his entire clan. Chu Yang definitely wouldn't believe it. Therefore, after he briefed Bu Liuqing and Moonbreeze, when Zi Xiecheng left, he didn't mention this at all. The key to success or failure of this matter was still Zi Xiecheng. Zi Xiecheng was the main force. Chu Yang was even thinking, if this isn't the case, then it must be Diwu Qingru's scheme. If Zi Xiecheng killed those few supreme martial artists, it's not a bad thing. That night, after Chu Yang checked on everyone's injuries, he returned to the room. These few days are indeed very peaceful. Chu Yang immersed his consciousness into the tribulation space and accepted the cleansing of his soul by the primordial violet vapor. With Moonbreeze here, the Zhuge clan can only try their best to avoid conflict with us. They definitely won't take the initiative to look for trouble. The sword spirit laughed. You must be very anxious these few days. Chu Yang squinted. Indeed. I have to suppress my aura every day. I didn't restrain it at all. Otherwise, Wu Jueqing wouldn't have discovered it. But the sword intent in his body can definitely discover me. The sword spirit forced a smile and said, as soon as he discovered me, he immediately changed his mind. Once it discovers me, then the sword intent will become agitated. Once it becomes agitated, Wu Jueqing will know. If it becomes too agitated, Wu Jueqing might even die of agitation. This matter is a little too aggrieved. It's clearly something that belongs to me. Not only do I have to control my desire now, but it's still a long way to go to get it back. If Wu Jueqing really fully recovers one day, then it'll be even more troublesome. Chu Yang sighed. After thinking for a long time, he said, I do have an idea. What idea? The sword spirit's eyes lit up and he asked excitedly. He already couldn't wait to withdraw the sword intent. Can you make the sword intent agitated without exposing yourself? Chu Yang asked. This. The sword spirit said awkwardly, it's very difficult. Very difficult means it's possible. Chu Yang interrupted. Then there's a way. The sword spirit was dumbfounded. Very difficult means it's possible? What kind of argument is this? In the next few days, Chu Yang began to treat Wu Jueqing gradually. But he was very careful. His injuries would get better one day, but worsen the next day. Every time, Chu Yang himself was very surprised. This. What's going on? Not only was Chu Yang surprised, Wu Jueqing was also surprised. Because when he tried to mobilize some energy and started to recover, he would find that it disappeared without a trace after a nap. What was going on? Wu Jueqing was a divine doctor himself. He naturally knew that Chu Yang was doing his best to treat him. Every step was very precise, and some were even ingenious that he had never thought of. As an expert, he had only gratitude towards Chu Yang. There was absolutely no doubt about it. Then, the problem lay with his body. But what problem could there be with his body? Wu Jueqing tried his best to check his body, but he couldn't find anything. Another day later, Wu Jueqing found that his condition had worsened. And now, he finally found the source of the problem, the sword intent. The sword intent was rapidly absorbing his energy. Every time he mobilized a little, it would absorb a little. In his current state, there was no way he could resist its absorption at all. If he was in his perfect state, he would be able to recover this bit of loss with a breath. He wouldn't take it to heart or notice it at all. But at a time like this, it was completely life-threatening. I'm still struggling at death's door. How am I going to recover if you absorb my energy to recover like this? At this moment, this Lord Wu's heart was completely cold. Fifth update. I'm writing chapter 1 right now. Requesting monthly votes. Give me some motivation to explode. Give me monthly votes. G. To be continued. Tilda. Chapter 2032. After another 3 days, Wu Jueqing was at his wit's end. But the sword intent became active. It absorbed faster and faster and started to absorb Wu Jueqing's potential. Wu Jueqing was so weak now that he couldn't even move his little finger. He had no ability to stop it at all. Besides absorbing his potential, the sword intent also started to move restlessly in his dantian. It seemed to have sensed that the current strength of the person who trapped it was no longer enough to suppress it. Therefore, the sword intent wanted to leave. That kind of feeling. The sword intent moved more and more vigorously. Finally, it was discovered by Chu Yang. This day, after applying the medicine, Chu Yang sat on the small stool beside Wu Jueqing's bed and looked at him seriously. Lord Wu, I think there's something I have to make clear to you. Wu Jueqing's eyes moved with difficulty. I know what you want to say. Go ahead. These few days, I was finally able to find out. It's not that Lord Wu didn't cooperate, nor was it that I used the wrong medicine. It's that there's still a huge hidden danger in the 5 great ginseng bodies. Chu Yang said seriously. Wu Jueqing completely agreed with Chu Yang's words. He encouraged Chu Yang with his gaze, asking him to continue. Moreover, this unknown force is devouring Lord Wu's spiritual energy. Only when it's satisfied can the remaining spiritual energy be used to heal Lord Wu's injuries. Chu Yang said seriously, but with Lord Wu's current condition, you can't satisfy the needs of this force at all. Therefore, you can't help yourself at all. My medicine, after passing through your meridians and turning into spiritual energy, was also devoured by this force. In fact, in these few days, Lord Wu hasn't received any treatment at all. Your injuries are continuing to worsen. Yes. Wu Jueqing sighed deeply. So, I've been thinking for the past few days whether or not we should release this power first. Or perhaps we should give it up for the time being and let our bodies recover first. At that time, we can start cultivating again or find some other method. I believe that since Lord Wu knows about this mysterious power, you should have a way. Chu Yang said with all his heart. That's right. Wu Jueqing agreed. If this force doesn't come out, my body won't be able to recover. How can I make this power come out? Chu Yang said, I really don't have any experience in this matter. Please enlighten me, Lord Wu. He added, Lord Wu, forgive me for saying this, but right now, your life is the most important thing. No matter if it's revenge or anything else, without your life, there's nothing to talk about. Wu Jueqing heaved a long sigh. Release this power. Wu Jueqing really couldn't bear to do it. This was a sword aura, an indestructible weapon with the power to instantly kill a supreme being. It was the greatest trump card of the Calamity Sword Master. Without it, his strength would be greatly reduced. However, Chu Yang was right. If you lost your life, even if you had the complete Calamity Sword, you would still be a corpse if you lost your life, not to mention the sword intent. It was useless. Wu Jueqing said helplessly, but with my current strength, even if I want to expel it, I'm powerless. Currently, this energy is very restless. It seems like it wants to break out of my body on its own. I can only wait for him to come out on his own. How should we preserve this power after we come out? Chu Yang asked in a considerate manner. There's no way to preserve it. Wu Jueqing sighed. After it comes out, it can only go wherever it wants to go. Chu Yang made a sound of surprise and said, what a pity, such a strong power. Wu Jueqing sighed deeply. Pity. If you knew what kind of power this was, you would feel that it was even more of a pity. After another 2 days, the injuries of Dong Wushang and the rest were basically healed. Mo Qingwu had also mostly recovered. Apart from Wu Jueqing and Wu Qianqian, everyone else had basically recovered. Of course, the Moon Breeze couple's injuries could only be said to have shown signs of improvement, but the distance to a full recovery. That was really as far as the distance between heaven and earth. The sword aura in Wu Jueqing's body became more and more restless, causing his injuries to worsen. His dantian was already faintly bulging and somewhat transparent. A silver snake-like thing was scurrying back and forth inside. Every day, Wu Jueqing's life was indescribably miserable, living a life worse than death. Finally, on this day, when Chu Yang came, Wu Jueqing suggested a solution. Use a saber and cut open my dantian. Get that thing out quickly. Enough. Master Wu had really had enough. No matter who it was, having to go through all the punishments in the 18 levels of hell every day, going back and forth more than a dozen times. It would be enough. Now, to Wu Jueqing, even if there was an entire tribulation sword in his dantian, he would give it up without hesitation. This was going to kill him. All right. Chu Yang immediately went out and prepared all the medicine. After fiddling with it for a long while, he came back in. Master Wu, you have to bear with it, Chu Yang said slowly. At this time, the sword aura was becoming more and more restless. Wu Jueqing was already in so much pain that he wanted to die. He said angrily, "Hurry." His voice was already trembling. Chu Yang no longer hesitated. With a swoosh, he cut open Wu Jueqing's dantian. Then, a gust of silver-colored gas rushed out of Wu Jueqing's body like a wild horse that had broken free of its reins. It soared into the sky, and with a clang, it pierced through a huge hole in the roof. Then, it turned into a streak of silver-colored lightning that was several miles long in the sky and disappeared without a trace. From the beginning to the end, it didn't stop and didn't turn back. There wasn't the slightest bit of reluctance. Wu Jueqing let out a long sigh. His eyes were full of reluctance. His body relaxed in an instant. However, the sword aura was gone after all. Chu Yang immediately got busy. He stopped the bleeding, then aligned the broken flesh, applied some medicine, cleaned the wound, and used his divine technique to help Wu Jueqing unblock the broken meridians. This time, it took more than 2 hours. She had barely managed to complete the treatment of Wu Jueqing's new wounds. At the moment when Wu Jueqing took the medicine, Wu Jueqing instantly felt a sensation that he hadn't felt in a long time. A surge of energy slowly spread out from the medicine, entered his already completely dried up meridians, entered his dantian, and then worked hard to heal his injuries. His life was saved after all. Moreover, with Chu Yang, a divine doctor who wasn't inferior to him in the slightest, here, although it would take a long time, his cultivation was also preserved. Wu Jueqing sighed in his heart. This was already very good. What more could he ask for? Outside the orchard palace, in the sky, a black shadow floated quietly. It emitted strange and silent waves. When the silver sword light saw this black shadow, it suddenly let out an excited sword chime. Then, like a moth to a flame, it flew toward the black shadow. As it flew closer and closer, the silver light also became smaller and smaller. It circled around the black fog and rubbed against it, as if it was reuniting after a long time and entering the arms of its parents. In the end, it silently melted into the black fog. The black fog silently dispersed in the sky, disappearing without a trace. All of this happened without a sound or sound. After Chu Yang finished treating Wu Jueqing let out a tired and sad sigh. He closed his eyes and fell into a deep sleep. Chu Yang quietly withdrew from the room. When he returned to his room, the black shadow couldn't wait to enter the tribulation space. Chu Yang hurriedly immersed his consciousness in. He saw the sword spirit asking excitedly, "Did you succeed?" The sword spirit nodded excitedly. "Ha ha ha. The sword intent has returned." Luckily, Wu Jueqing nourished it for so long. Now, its sharpness has basically been restrained. After merging into the tribulation sword, whether it's the tip, the edge or the blade, its power will double. Chu Yang said excitedly, "Doesn't that mean that I can also kill supreme martial artists in an instant in the future?" The sword spirit immediately rolled his eyes. "Big brother, don't make such a joke. With your current strength, it's already very good that you can activate the primary form of the sword intent. Do you think that you can kill supreme martial artists in an instant in Wu Jueqing's hands?" Chu Yang said angrily, "Wu Jueqing is not the tribulation sword master. He can use it, but I, the real one, can't." The sword spirit said, "That's not the case. If you want to unleash the true power of the sword intent, you can even split the heavens in half. But the prerequisite is that you need to have the cultivation to unleash the greatest power. Everyone knows that you can unify the heavens with the tribulation sword, but have you? Wu Jueqing is already a supreme martial artist, aren't you?" Chu Yang said angrily, "I'm just saying. I just said one sentence, and you have 10 sentences waiting for me. You're just like a woman. The sword spirit was furious, but he kept silent. Chu Yang checked his dantian and saw that on the tribulation sword, a white light was swimming from the sword tip to the sword edge, then to the sword edge, and then to the sword guard. It was having a lot of fun. However, the sword edge, sword tip, and sword guard seemed to be very dissatisfied with this white light. Occasionally, the sword edge would flick it away, and the sword edge would throw it away. The sword edge would directly cut it into several pieces, and the sword guard would silently resist it. Chu Yang was very curious. This oblique sword intent didn't seem to be very popular. They blame it for having another aura on it and are very dissatisfied, the sword spirit explained. It's like a husband who caught his wife cheating on him and wants to wash it. What they're doing now is to wash away Wu Juecheng's aura. A husband who caught his wife cheating on him and wants to wash it. Chu Yang was sweating profusely. He couldn't take this kind of fierceness anymore. He stopped talking to this guy and focused on the sword intent. As it collided and swam continuously, the white light on its body also gradually became clear. Slowly, it changed from a kind of flickering brilliance to a constant and gentle white light. Then, it attached itself to the sword tip. The sword tip trembled and didn't reject it anymore. Then, the sword edge, and sword guard also didn't reject it. Then, the entire tribulation sword emitted a blurry light. A kind of gentle light slowly merged into the tribulation sword and disappeared. A feeling arose in Chu Yang's heart. If the tribulation sword was a human body, then the sword intent was the meridians. Now, the meridians were back in place. He could clearly feel that the power of the tribulation sword had increased by at least a few times. Chapter 2033. The elder in black looked at him coldly and said indifferently, I am the gold medal law enforcement officer of the law enforcement interrogation hall, Tian Yud. Gold medal law enforcement officer. The white-robed elder exclaimed exaggeratedly, wow. So awesome. Looking at your posture and tone, I thought the Dharma Supreme was here, speaking in such a 60s tone. Then, he rolled his eyes and shouted, Tian Yud, do you know who I am? Tian Yud said angrily, I don't care who you are. Let go of him first. He had always been in charge of the interrogation hall and was always the one who made others angry. When had anyone ever bullied him? Now, he couldn't hold it in anymore. The white-robed elder's face turned serious and he said coldly, I am Ning Haijiao. He took 2 steps forward and said indifferently, have you heard of me before? Ning Haijiao? Never heard of you. Tian Yud snorted and said disdainfully. The white-robed elder, Ning Haijiao, had a desolate look in his eyes. With his hands behind his back, he sighed. In this world, the people of the martial world are so forgetful. They even forgot about me. It's really terrifying. Nameless person, you are courting death. Tian Yud's face was already black and he was about to attack. Ning Haijiao said with emotion, back then, we were born from the same mother and roamed the martial world side by side. The world's edge saber and world's edge sword shocked the world. How glorious that was. But because of a moment of carelessness, we were plotted against and retreated from the martial world. Only a few years have passed and no one knows about me anymore. Sigh. The sorrow of life is really lamentable. Tian Yud strode over and said with a sinister smile, the ends of the world. I will send you to the ends of the world right now. Wait. Behind him, another black-robed elder shouted to stop him. Tian Yud said discontentedly, Sun Jin, what's wrong with you? Why are you shouting at me? Sun Jin ignored him and looked at the white-robed elder with uncertainty. Your surname is Ning. The white-robed elder rolled his eyes and said, if my surname is not Ning, then should I follow your surname? These words were really impolite to the extreme. Sun Jin, however, broke out in a cold sweat. May I ask what is your relationship with Ning Tianya, supreme martial artist Ning? As soon as the 3 words Ning Tianya came out, Tian Yud felt as if he was struck by lightning, and he was flabbergasted. He took 3 steps back. He looked at the white-robed old man in front of him in disbelief. Sigh, I didn't want to use my big brother's name to scare people. The white-robed old man, Ning Haijiao sighed. Since you have recognized me, I might as well say it clearly. I am Ning Haijiao, Ning Tianya's younger brother. Everyone was shocked and vomited at the same time. Aren't you fucking using your big brother's name to scare people? Look at how you're composing poems the moment you open your mouth, and how you're talking about the ends of the earth when you close your mouth. You're simply afraid that the world doesn't know about it. I really don't know how you're going to use your big brother's name to scare people. How preposterous. Sir, you say that you are Supremacy Ning's younger brother. Do you have any proof? Sun Zhen's voice was filled with respect. Ning Haijiao raised his hand and threw out a jade pendant. He said, "Proof. I didn't want to show it to you at first. However, I've retreated from the martial world for a long time and haven't meddled in the affairs of the world. In order to prevent others from saying that I'm a swindler, I have no choice but to lower my status." Sun Zhen caught the jade pendant and saw that there was a Ning character in the middle of the jade pendant. At this time, the experts in the hall had already walked out one by one. They surrounded the hall and watched this scene in whispers. Ning Tianya's younger brother. With such a high status, he had actually come to Yi province. To this law enforcement branch. A person's name. A tree's shadow. Who dared to slight him? Everyone was very curious. Looking at this ordinary jade pendant in his palm, Sun Zhen was somewhat baffled. Damn it, this jade pendant is made of inferior white crystal. Only a Ning character engraved on it can prove that you're Ning Tianya's younger brother. If that's the case, I can casually make 8 to 10,000 pieces of it. Why? Ning Haijiao rolled his eyes. Can't see the mystery? To think that you're supreme martial artist. You're practically two pig heads. If you don't use your internal energy to activate the jade pendant, how can you show the pressure of a supreme martial artist? Do you actually need me to teach you this kind of logic? Sigh, how did this world become like this? Don't you know how to respect your elders? All of you are still pretending to be human. But all of you are idiots and your brains are full of shit. Sun Zhen was infuriated by his scolding. He was almost about to fly into a rage, but in the end, he suppressed it. The white crystal contained a supreme martial artist's divine consciousness. With the simple material of the white crystal, it could actually contain a supreme martial artist's divine consciousness. This in itself was an inconceivable thing. Only those powerful people could store a supreme martial artist's divine consciousness in a piece of white crystal. An ordinary supreme martial artist would probably explode the moment he inserted it. Therefore, when they heard that there was supreme martial artist Ning's divine consciousness in it, everyone was somewhat convinced. All of you, take a look. Come closer and see the secret behind it. I'm not bluffing you. Ning Haijiao hugged his arms and looked up at the sky, shouting without looking away. Indeed, everyone wanted to see how this white crystal contained the supreme martial artist's divine sense, because this represented a supreme level of control. This was a genuine high-level supreme martial artist's technique. Once they were touched and comprehended a little, they would benefit immensely. Therefore, no one was in the mood to care about this old fellow's bossy attitude and they all gathered over. Even Nyo Dafa, who had been slapped violently just now, also didn't care about his old face and went over to watch with his eyes wide open. As for the slap just now, Hall Chief Nyo had already forgotten about it. In fact, he even felt honored. In this world, who had ever been slapped by Ning Tianya's younger brother? No one, right? Old people did, although it was a slap, but what a great honor this was. To think that I, Nyo Dafa, would one day be related to supreme martial artist Ning's Ning clan. I, Nyo Dafa, am really awesome. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Sun Zhen carefully placed the jade pendant in his palm and then activated his elemental energy. This jade pendant slowly emitted a sparkling and translucent white light, forming a halo of light. Everyone gasped in admiration. It was indeed a supreme martial artist's technique. At this level, the supreme martial artist's divine consciousness was actually still not activated. Everyone became even more curious as they stared and opened their mouths wide. Even if they were forced to kneel on the ground by the supreme martial artist's divine consciousness that suddenly appeared, That would also be a rare experience. Sun Zhen's expression also became even more solemn as he slowly increased the output of his elemental energy. The next moment, bang! Without any warning, not only did the supreme martial artist's divine consciousness not appear on this ordinary white crystal jade pendant, it suddenly exploded violently. Ah! Everyone exclaimed in unison and was instantly dumbstruck. A colorless and odorless gas was suddenly emitted from the white crystal land. Everyone exclaimed and naturally had to open their mouths. They had already held their breaths for a long time just now. When they opened their mouths, they naturally had to breathe. This breath. Almost everyone had a share. Most of this colorless and odorless gas was not wasted. Everyone inhaled a mouthful of it firmly. This colorless and odorless gas was really incredible. This was an innate poison that Miss Chu Lerer had spent a lot of effort to come up with and give to her brother for self-defense. The amount of poison was huge and the toxicity was fierce. Even if it was someone like Ning Tianya, if he suddenly inhaled it, he would only feel dizzy. Other than immediately running away and finding a place to expel the poison, he would definitely not have any other thoughts. Not to mention these people now. What is this? Sun Zhen was caught off guard and inhaled the most. There were already some double images in his eyes, and he felt so dizzy that the world was spinning. He scolded with difficulty, "You! What the hell are you doing?" But he only heard that Ning Haijiao laughing and saying, that's true. Fuck, this medicine is really useful." Then, there were a few thuds. Lord Ning Haijiao kicked each of these experts who had already been poisoned and were swaying. He scolded, "How dare you doubt my identity? Fuck. I'm an extraterrestrial demon. What's wrong with pretending to be Ning Tianya's younger brother?" Sun Zhen and Tian Yu hadn't fainted yet. When they heard that, they only complained, "This time, we've really been cheated. It's actually the extraterrestrial demon Chu Yang and the rest." They hated themselves immensely. How could they be so careless? At the entrance, 2 figures flew in. With a palm each, 2 guards who hadn't recovered from their shock were sent flying and fell to the ground unconscious. Then, Sun Zhen heard one of them ask, "Butong, it's done?" This Ning Haijiao's voice was very smug. "Once I make a move, how can it not be done? I'm Ning Tianya's younger brother. As the saying goes, those who are good at fighting don't have outstanding achievements. Once they make a move, everything will be settled imperceptibly. Don't talk nonsense." Another steady and heavy voice said, "Which one is more important than your identity? Quickly knock them out and take them away." Sun Zhen and Tian Yu's consciousness stopped at this point. They had completely fainted. Before they fainted, they were still thinking, "It's over. What kind of poison is this? How can it be so overbearing? Could it be the extraterrestrial demon's unique poison?" The 3 of them picked up Tian Yu, Sun Zhen, and Nyo Dafar as if they were flying and left in a flash. The last person walking was Burly. When he reached the entrance, he stopped and pulled out a big saber. With a fierce sweep of the saber, he immediately returned the saber to its sheath and left as fast as he could. The saber light was like a waterfall. Once the saber was out, it immediately split into 7 or 8 saber auras. Like a gust of wind, it cut everyone in the courtyard who had already been poisoned into 2. Blood was dripping. With a flash, the 3 of them disappeared without a trace. By the time the experts from the law enforcement hall in the backyard rushed over, the scene had already completely ended. There were only corpses strewn all over the courtyard. Not a single living person could be seen. Everyone couldn't help but look at each other. What kind of powerful enemy could actually kill so many experts in one fell swoop? At the inn where Chu Yang and the other 2 were staying, Chu Yang pulled off the cloth covering his head and said lightly, "Start the interrogation immediately. No matter what means you use, you must pry open the mouths of these 3 people for me." Those who couldn't make head or tail of the previous chapter can now understand. I'll continue to work hard. G. Chapter 2034. Chu Yang clearly felt that the material of the stone started to become finer. Moreover, there was a sense of flexibility. The cross-section was also as fine as mud that had rotted for hundreds of years. Moreover, the wind blowing from such a stone was actually getting stronger and stronger. The sound of thunder was faintly heard, and it was extremely dull, one sound after another, as if it was a dull and real blow to the heart. Even the sword spirit was aghast at the sight of such power. Because, in the past, the previous masters of the tribulation sword had never experienced such a situation, but the sword spirit was already used to it. Ever since he followed this sword master, which thing had ever happened before? From the first fragment of the tribulation sword to now, every step this sword master took brought him a new feeling and a new experience. Chu Yang was still working hard. The stone pillar had already begun to sway greatly. It suddenly tilted towards one side. Then, it swayed back, and fell towards the other side again. It seemed to want to throw the person standing on its head down at all costs. But no matter how it fell, Chu Yang stood on it as if it had grown roots. The sword light in his hand flickered, undulating continuously. After another 500 feet, the material of the stone became finer and finer. In the end, it was as if it had completely become one. Not even the slightest trace of sand or other forms of fusion could be found. The wind blew faster, and the thunder became deeper. Chu Yang turned a deaf ear to it. He allowed his black clothes to flutter in the wind. He just buried his head and worked hard. Finally, the tribulation sword let out a cheerful sword cry. A cold light emitted from its body, and then it turned warm. A sense of calmness suddenly rose from Chu Yang's heart. He kicked away the big stone under his feet, and saw a sparkling light suddenly appear. It was very short and thin. Compared to the sword body, it was one size smaller. But it was sparkling. It had a calm and ancient aura. It came straight towards him. When the other fragments of the tribulation sword were discovered, they were very excited. They seemed to want to jump up and celebrate. But this sword tongue clearly saw its old brother that it had not seen for 10,000 years. It was actually lying there motionless. The light on its body flashed, showing its excitement. However, it did not move at all. It was very reserved, or rather, very steady. Seeing this ancient sword tongue, Chu Yang suddenly thought of Dong Wushang's temperament for some inexplicable reason. That kind of calm and heroic aura also reminded him of Mo Tianji's temperament. That kind of strategizing, Ao Xieyun's manner, that kind of silent savagery, calamity sword, sword tongue. He finally appeared. Asterisk 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 asterisk. The tongue of the sword was the part of the sword that was wrapped by the hilt. It pierced through the hilt and was not exposed to the outside. It could not be used to attack, but it was the foundation of the sword. A sword. If there was no sword tongue, it would break soon. If the sword's tongue, hilt, and body were all one, it would be hard and straight, but not flexible enough. Therefore, there was no doubt that the sword tongue was the foundation of the sword. Chu Yang suppressed the excitement in his heart. He bent down and gently picked up the sword sheath with one hand. He vaguely felt as if a thought was greeting him. Greetings, sword master. But when Chu Yang listened carefully, he realized that this was just his own misconception. The tribulation sword in his hand automatically disintegrated. The sword tip, sword edge, sword blade, and sword guard flew in circles around the sword tongue. The sword tongue floated silently in the air, the light on its body brightening. The sword intent immediately wrapped around the sword tongue. Then, the sword tip, sword blade, sword edge, and sword guard seemed to have received an order. They all pounced over. The sword tongue flashed and floated up quietly. It stood still in the air and issued a summon. The sword guard whooshed over. It leaned over. With a clang, the sword guard and the sword tongue merged into one. Then, the sword edge, and sword tip all went back to their original positions. A tribulation sword suddenly took shape. Half of the tribulation sword's shadow in Chu Yang's dantian had already materialized. The 5 fragments of the tribulation sword floated in front of Chu Yang. Chu Yang gently stretched out his hand and held the sword tongue. He immediately felt a sense of connection. Suddenly, he felt as if the tribulation sword had become a part of his body and could no longer be separated. It was as if they were in perfect harmony. Both sides were adapting. Chu Yang tried to circulate the heaven-splitting divine technique and injected it into the tribulation sword. He clearly felt the sword tongue tremble. Then, the tribulation sword let out an extremely joyful sword cry. For sentences suddenly appeared in Chu Yang's heart. The hidden light of the hidden edge is not over at night. Strategizing for days and months. I would rather hide for my entire life. But I am a murderous maniac. Then, a figure inexplicably appeared in Chu Yang's mind. It was holding a long sword and dancing slowly. It was the fifth fragment of the tribulation sword, the four sword techniques belonging to the sword tongue. Chu Yang focused on memorizing. At this moment, he was completely focused. The sword spirit was also watching Chu Yang attentively, paying attention to Chu Yang's mental state. Slowly, Chu Yang also gradually understood the purpose and functions of these four techniques. He couldn't help but praise them in his heart. The sword tongue had always been known as the foundation of the sword. It was indeed not without reason. To Chu Yang's understanding, the sword tongue was like a big hand hidden in the dark. It never appeared. But this hand held the world's top killing power, the sharpest sword. Compared to the killing sword, the scariest part should be this hand. The first technique, the hidden edge, is not over at night. As the name suggested, it was to hide in the dark and wait for an opportunity to strike. This was a hidden technique. But every part of it was full of killing intent. It could attack from any direction at any time. There was absolutely no blind spot in the attack. The second technique, the long planning of the day and the moon, was similar to the first technique. But it had an additional grasp of the battle situation. This technique had clearly expanded the alert range by 10 times. Not only his own enemies, but even his comrades, brothers, and possible enemies were all faintly shrouded by this move. The third move was to hide one's entire life. It was like the darkness before the dawn. After all preparations were made, this move would hide all the aura, killing intent, and even the sword master's own life force and divine thoughts. Everything would be hidden. It was like the strange and terrifying calm before the storm. The fourth technique, however, was a murderous maniac. It was after the foreshadowing of the first three techniques. Suddenly, thunder and lightning erupted. It was as if the clear sky had completely collapsed at this moment and the earth had completely collapsed at this moment. All the battle power. At this moment. All of them were fully unleashed. Murderous maniac. This technique was completely unexpected. But its power was the sum of the four techniques. In fact, it was even more powerful. This was definitely the most insidious and vicious of the four sword techniques in the tribulation sword technique. Such insidiousness and treachery made Chu Yang, the sword master, break out in cold sweat after he understood these four sword techniques. As Chu Yang memorized these four sword techniques, the tribulation sword suddenly disappeared from his hand. Hey, I haven't finished using it yet. Chu Yang was very surprised. This sword tongue is not very obedient. This is the habit of the sword tongue. He first went to take a look at the place where he lives. His brothers accompanied him to visit his new home. The sword spirit rolled his eyes. He was speechless at this guy's lack of experience. Indeed, after a while, sword light flashed and the tribulation sword automatically appeared in Chu Yang's hand. Chu Yang could feel a faint sense of joy coming from the calamity sword. As if the sword tongue was saying, "Not bad, I'm barely satisfied." Yes. It was expressing its sincere respect to the sword master. And a faint apology. I didn't expect it to be unexpectedly good. Fuck. Chu Yang cursed in his heart. If you're still not satisfied with my Dantian, there probably won't be a new home in this world that can satisfy you. Since he had already taken out the sword tongue, Chu Yang naturally wouldn't let go of the rest. He reached out and touched the place where the sword tongue was. It was slippery. It seemed to be very soft to the touch, but in fact, it was so hard that it made one's hair stand on end. Chu Yang felt that even star iron might not be much harder than the rocks here. Yet, it gave off a soft and slippery feeling. And, in this soft and slippery feeling, there was actually wind and thunder surging. Chu Yang raised his hand and the sword fell. Large rocks were kicked down the deep valley by him. Now that he had the sword tongue, Chuyong no longer had any qualms. He drank a mouthful of the wine left by Shue Leahan and 2 mouthfuls of spiritual spring water. Then, he started to work energetically. This time, he didn't have any qualms. With a swing of his sword, he chopped down several large rocks and threw them down. All the way down, there were still such rocks. After chopping down 5,000 feet, it was still the same. There were no changes. Even with Chuyong's cultivation and tenacity, he couldn't help but feel a little tired. It can't all be rocks like this, right? Chuyong looked up. He couldn't see the sky anymore. Only the heavy snow was still falling. He couldn't help but talk to himself gloomily. He couldn't see the top and bottom. How long would he have to chop for? Definitely not. There will definitely be something good, said the sword spirit with certainty. All right, I'll admit it. Even if I have to chop down 10,000 feet all the way to the end, even if there's nothing, I'll admit it. Chuyong gritted his teeth and said fiercely. Another 4 hours passed. Chuyong almost wanted to slap himself. He had never realized that he had the potential to jinx it. In 4 hours, he had chopped down a height of 20,000 feet, but there was still nothing. He saw that half of this stone pillar had already been chopped down by him. The shaking wasn't that big anymore. Fuck, what exactly is this? It's actually hidden so well. Chuyong cursed. Luckily, it's the tribulation sword. If it were any other sword, even Dong Wushang's dark saber would have been broken long ago. What strange thing is this? The sword spirit said. Besides, even a supreme martial artist can't move it. Chuyong was shocked. Yes, with the hardness and weight of this place, even if a supreme martial artist had the ability to move mountains and fill seas, to move this stone pillar completely, it was probably impossible. He roused himself and chopped down madly. This time, he chopped down 500 feet. After 300 sword strikes in a row, Chuyong wanted to cry but had no tears to shed. My Jinx's mouth is working. Because, he could already see the ground below. I've really chopped down close to 10,000 feet. Chuyong was a little dizzy. At this moment, a strange change suddenly happened. I'm about to collapse. From morning till now, 4 chapters. Okay, I'll continue to write the 5th chapter. Chapter 2035. But at this moment, as Chuyong's sword fell, a gust of wind suddenly blew on the stone pillar. The wind at this moment was a hurricane. Chuyong didn't even have time to kick the 10,000-pound stone that he had just chopped down. But, it was blown away by the hurricane. Then, there was a crisp cracking sound, followed by a rumbling sound. Right in front of Chuyong, a dazzling bolt of lightning suddenly rose up. The lightning was so bright that it even illuminated the mountain walls on both sides of the mountain. Chuyong opened his eyes and looked down. He screamed and covered his eyes with his hands. He saw 2 dazzling lights on the cross-section of the stone. There was light in the world, and it was called extreme. Extreme light. And, these 2 lights could be called extreme light. Chuyong glanced at it, and saw a green light and a white light flashing fiercely. Minister Chu was caught off guard, and his eyes suddenly turned white. He suddenly closed his eyes, and felt tears flowing out from the corners of his eyes. His eyes were sore and unspeakable. He couldn't open them. He only heard the sword spirit's incoherent words of surprise. Oh my God, it's this thing. Oh my God, it's really, oh my God. The more Chuyong listened, the more his heart itched. He couldn't open his eyes. He had no choice but to ask, Sword Spirit, what is this? This is the best thing. It's the second most wonderful medicine in the world. I've finally seen this legendary thing. Oh my God. The Sword Spirit's voice trembled. After talking for a long time, he still didn't get to the point. He was obviously very excited. Chuyong despised him in his heart. He worked hard to restore his eyes. Finally, he was able to open them a little. He couldn't wait to squint and look. He saw 2 pieces of jade confronting each other on the cross-section of the stone. One piece was shining with a green light, and the wind was whistling. The other piece was flickering with a white lightning, and the sound of thunder was faintly heard. At this moment, a dazzling light was emitted from the green jade. At the same time, A blazing lightning was emitted from the white jade. Chu Yang hurriedly closed his eyes. He could still feel the two strong beams of light colliding violently. They passed each other and pounced on the cliffs on both sides of the mountain. Suddenly, a fierce wind whistled on the cliff on the left. Snow swelled up like an avalanche and scattered in the sky. Bolts of lightning danced on the cliff on the right. Thunder rumbled and rumbled. Chu Yang opened his mouth wide in shock. A few small stones flew into his mouth with tinkling sounds, but he didn't notice. So this is the Wind Thunder platform and the Wind Thunder mountain. All the strange phenomena of heaven and earth came from these two small pieces of jade. Chu Yang finally said something and shut his mouth. With a crunching sound, a few stones were crushed by his teeth and he spat them out. A small jade slip. The sword spirit sneered, "This is not a jade slip. Look carefully." Chu Yang looked at them carefully, and saw that these two pieces of jade, one green and one white, seemed to be moving. They seemed to be squirming. No, they were flowing. "This is jade paste." The sword spirit indifferently replied, "It's the same as your mysterious ice jade ointment. But its energy is much stronger." "What kind of jade cream is this?" Chu Yang asked in shock. "This is the Heavenly Imperial Court." The heavenly heart of wind and lightning, which only existed in legends, was also known as the Heavenly Jade Paste. "I didn't expect that it would come to this continent and become one of the great miracle medicines," the sword spirit said in a heavy voice. "Heavenly heart of wind and lightning? Heavenly Jade Paste?" Chu Yang scratched his head in confusion. This was really the first time he heard this name in his life. "It's right that you don't know. I can only say that your luck, really makes me speechless," the sword spirit said with some envy and jealousy. The soul's face was distorted. "Please enlighten me." Chu Yang had such a good thing. If he didn't understand something, he would definitely not be ashamed to ask. Of course, after asking, he would kick him to the curb. According to ancient legends, heaven has a heart, and earth has a soul. The sword spirit breathed a sigh of relief. He said, "And the heart of heaven is the combination of yin and yang. Heaven and earth collide, and the combination of wind and thunder is the heart of heaven." The sword spirit said in a pilgrimage tone, "This heavenly heart of wind and lightning is only the heavenly jade paste now. When wind and thunder combine and merge into one, it will become the heavenly heart of wind and lightning." He looked at Chu Yang and said heavily, "The heart of heaven." Even though he was mentally prepared, Chu Yang couldn't help but be shocked by this news. "The heart of heaven? Oh my God, it's just a legend." The sword spirit was a little embarrassed. He said, "It's actually just a description to describe how powerful this thing is. It's okay, I believe it." Chu Yang beamed at the heavenly heart of wind and lightning in front of him. Who cares if it's a legend or not? In the future, if anyone says it's not, I'll fight with him. The sword spirit was speechless again. "How do I keep this thing?" Chu Yang asked humbly. He tried to use his mental power to keep it in the tribulation space, but the two pieces of jade ignored him and didn't move at all. "Your left hand is yang, grab the thunder jade, and your right hand is yin, grab the wind jade. Grab with both hands and separate them, then you can keep them in the tribulation space," the sword spirit said. "Be careful, you must be fast and do it at the same time. Otherwise," before he finished speaking, Chu Yang had already reached out and grabbed the thunder jade with one hand and the wind jade with the other. They were soft and smooth to the touch, as if they could change into different shapes at any time. Then, the next moment, boom! Chu Yang's palms turned into charcoal. He stood up in pain and shook his hands violently. He hissed in cold air. "Bastard, you only said to keep them, but I have to put them in one after the other, right? Why did I get hit the moment I let go?" The sword spirit gloated helplessly. "That's necessary." Chu Yang was in a dilemma. He hurriedly took out some medicine and swallowed it. Right at this moment, the bottom of the stone pillar of the Wind Thunder platform suddenly and slowly sank down until it was level with the ground at the bottom. 30 feet away, there was a pile of snow and ice hundreds of feet high. "Lord Sword Master, your benefits are here," the sword spirit said. "Benefits?" Chu Yang was stunned. "Here, look under your feet." The sword spirit pouted. Chu Yang looked down and saw a hair-thin crack slowly appearing under his feet. The crack became bigger and bigger, and it cracked open more and more, revealing a flat hole that only one person could pass through. This is the only way in and out of the lower three heavens and the upper three heavens. Before you get the second fragment of the tribulation sword, this is the only way in and out. And only you can enter and exit. The sword spirit said, "This is the heaven's path." Chu Yang became excited. "I can go to the upper three heavens from here? Or the lower three heavens?" "Yes," the sword spirit said. "But you have to be careful, you only have 3 months. And when you pass through the heaven's path, my soul body needs to sleep. I can't help you at all." Chu Yang nodded. "It's okay, with my current cultivation. If I still need your help in the upper three heavens or the lower three heavens, then I'll really be a joke." The sword spirit reminded him, "Don't forget, only 3 months. Remember. After 3 months, you must come back here. Even if you're a moment late, the consequences will be unimaginable." Chu Yang waved his hand impatiently. "Hurry up and go back to sleep. I don't need you to teach me how to go. I know what I'm doing." "What do you know? You're obviously so excited that you can't tell north from south." The sword spirit disappeared with a whoosh. Then, the heavenly hearts of wind and thunder that had just been kept in the tribulation space flew up and entered Chu Yang's meridians from left and right. The hole on the ground was already emitting a misty fog. Chu Yang closed his eyes and jumped in with a puff sound. He then laughed out loud. "Brothers, your beloved big brother is back." The white fog at the hole surged and Chu Yang's figure disappeared. Above the heavenly palace, purple clouds drifted. Here. Surrounded by clouds, jade buildings, and heavenly palaces, it was indeed different from the rest. This was a majestic palace hidden in the mountains. Countless guards guarded this place from front to back, making it impregnable. A white figure flashed and Zi Sheqing, dressed in snow-white clothes, floated down. Looking at the majestic palace in front of her, a complicated look flashed across her eyes. Then, her white clothes fluttered as she walked forward. She hadn't taken 2 steps when suddenly, a figure flashed. 2 golden figures appeared in front of her. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" Zi Sheqing said lightly, "Please report to the Demon Empress that the person who made an agreement 70,000 years ago is here." The 2 golden figures glanced at her. They snorted. "With your cultivation, you can actually make an agreement with the Demon Empress 70,000 years ago? Are you qualified?" Zi Sheqing said lightly, "Whether I'm qualified, needs to be evaluated by the Demon Empress. If I'm lying, I'm here and can't run away. If I'm not lying and delay the Demon Empress plans, can you bear the responsibility?" The golden armored guard was stunned and looked at her suspiciously. "Wait a moment." The other person hurriedly flew inside. Not long after, he ran out with sweat all over his head. "The Demon Empress invites Miss Z to come in." Zi Sheqing snorted and walked away. The 2 guards bowed and greeted her with smiles on their faces, apologizing profusely. In the hall, Zi Sheqing sat opposite a beautiful woman in palace attire, her face calm. "Are you saying that you've agreed to my request back then?" The Demon Empress raised her teacup and drank a mouthful of water. She looked at Zi Sheqing with a half-smile. 70,000 years ago, you risked your life to escape even at the cost of your body. Today, you've come to me voluntarily and agreed. "Yes." Zi Sheqing took a breath. "But I also hope that the Demon Empress can fulfill one of my conditions." The Demon Empress narrowed her eyes and gave off a dangerous glow. She said, "How many thousands of years has it been since anyone dared to talk about conditions with me? I didn't expect that a little demon would dare to talk about conditions in front of me. Tell me. I can use my life essence and the purple mystic pill that I cultivated for hundreds of thousands of years to save Tai's life." Zi Sheqing said calmly. A trace of pain and longing flashed past her eyes, but she said firmly, "But, I want to be a human." "You want to be a human?" The Demon Empress suddenly sat up straight and looked at Zi Sheqing in shock. Her eyes were sharp and filled with disbelief. "Yes, I want to be a human, a real human, not a transformed human, but, a human. Xi Xiecheng bowed down. Please fulfill my wish, Demon Empress. Chapter 2036. Among the brothers, the one who was beaten up the most was definitely not the first challenger, Ji Mo. It was Duke Xie, Ao Xieyun. Especially Ao Xieyun, the instigator. Because Chu Yang had said before, how can a divine dragon bloodline not have a dragon head? Besides, it was this guy who had suggested to turn Chu Yang into a dragon head in the beginning. How could Chu Yang let him go? Therefore, Ao Xieyun's dragon horns were the most majestic and spectacular. Therefore, Duke Xie begged for mercy as he fought. Boss, it's my father's birthday today. Save me some face. Only Minister Chu's reply was, you have more face when you transform into a divine dragon. After fighting 4 people in a row, Chu Yang was in a good mood. In fact, he was very happy. Other than Ji Mo, who had turned into a dragon head in one move because he had underestimated his opponent, the other 3 all gave Chu Yang different degrees of great surprise. Everyone's cultivation was the same, but their battle tactics were completely different. This was what made Chu Yang the happiest. Each of them had their own style. Even if they were together every day, they would never be assimilated by each other. Their self-awareness was very strong. This was also the most basic and important condition to become a top-level martial artist. Luo Kedi's lone wolf-like attacking style and his ferocious sword techniques surprised Chu Yang. Fighting with Luo Kedi was like facing a pack of wolves in a boundless forest. Extremely hungry wolves, biting from all directions. If one was not careful, they would be torn into pieces. When Xie Danqiong's viburnum flowers bloomed, they were the most beautiful in the world. This kind of dazzling and dreamlike technique was an eye-opener for Chu Yang. When the viburnum flowers bloomed, it was like a fairy scattering flowers, colorful and colorful. It was indeed very beautiful, but behind this extreme beauty was unparalleled killing intent. Chu Yang's clothes were cut in more than 10 places. It was caused by Xie Danqiong's viburnum flowers. When Ao Xieyun's Divine Dragon Battle Manual was used, Chu Yang felt a great strain. This was the first time such a situation had happened in a battle with Chu Yang. Chu Yang was a top-level sword saint, under the suppression of cultivation level. He could already fight a second-grade supreme martial artist, and Ao Xieyun was only a first-grade supreme martial artist who had just advanced. Among the 4, only Ao Xieyun's Divine Dragon Battle Manual could. Chu Yang was a little confused, unable to see the direction. However, this battle had greatly increased his confidence. Jiu Du Xing had been watching from the side. The more he watched, the brighter his eyes became, and the stronger his fighting spirit became. Chu Yang's strength and sharpness were both top-notch sword cultivators. Both of them were fatally attractive to him. It caused the sword intent in his chest to move unhindered, and he thirsted for battle. Ao Xieyun and the others had already been defeated. There was only Jiu Duxing left. Chu Yang was still standing there. He looked at Jiu Duxing with a smile, the sword in his hand flashing. Chu Yang didn't move, and neither did Jiu Duxing. However, sword energy suddenly surged in the arena. The surrounding flowers and plants all fell down neatly, the sword intent in their bodies. They both felt the same aura from each other. Even if people don't fight, even the sword had to fight. There are no 2 suns in the sky, and no 2 monarchs in a country. Similarly, in the land of the sword Dao, there was only one emperor. Chu Yang's eyes became sharper and more fervent. Jiu Duxing straightened his body. Suddenly, there was a clanging sound in the air. He was originally standing as straight as a javelin, but when he straightened his back, it was as if a peerless divine sword had suddenly been unsheathed. His expression and aura were completely different from just now. Come on, Chu Yang said. Come on, Jiu Duxing said coldly. Chu Yang stood still on the spot. Jiu Duxing spread his arms. With a whoosh, Ao Xieyun and the other 3 were sent 100 feet away. Then, he walked forward slowly. With every step he took, his sword intent became sharper. Boss, please advise me. Jiu Duxing took 3 steps forward. I've been practicing the sword since I was young. My life was wandering and lonely. I felt depressed and created the Sword of Solitude. In the lower three heavens, I met Boss, and my sword energy changed to become the Sword of Solitude. Although I'm lonely, I want to use my loneliness as a guardian. In the lower three heavens, I met Tu Qianhao. In a battle of life and death, I comprehended Tu Qianhao's Sword of Oblivion. Sword of Oblivion. Sword of Oblivion. Gu Duxing said lightly, these two sword techniques are gathered in me. Until now, they haven't been unified. Today's battle is, firstly, to satisfy my craving and fight for supremacy in the Sword Dao. Secondly, to let Boss experience my Sword of Solitude. My Sword of Oblivion. My Heart of Solitude. My Heaven of Oblivion. As he said the last sentence, Gu Duxing suddenly raised his head. His eyes shone brightly, like two long swords that had already been unsheathed, shining brightly in the sky. Chu Yang smiled lightly. Duxing, I know you've always wanted to experience the Calamity Sword technique. Today, I'll fulfill this wish of yours. Chu Yang said this through telepathy. He had already sensed that Huyan Aobo and the others were watching this battle. So, he was still cautious and didn't say it out loud. Upon hearing the words Calamity Sword technique, Gu Duxing's sword intent surged. His battle intent soared. Suddenly, he let out a long howl. With a howl, heaven and earth shook. The white clouds in the sky were suddenly cut into pieces and scattered in all directions as if they had encountered sharp wind blade. Today, the wish of a lifetime was fulfilled. Clang. The black dragon sword appeared in Gu Duxing's hand with a bone-piercing coldness and bleakness. Then, Gu Duxing strode forward. He walked step by step, his footsteps heavy. But every step he took covered at least 100 feet of space. But after taking 5 steps like this, he still hadn't reached Chu Yang. Chu Yang reached out and a long sword appeared in his hand. He didn't use the Calamity Sword. There was no need for the Calamity Sword in a spar between brothers. A bolt of lightning suddenly appeared in the sky. Gu Duxing's voice rang out. Heaven's Solitude. A mighty sword intent, with a bleak solitude, poured down. Sword aura spread out and enveloped a radius of 100 feet. Gu Duxing rose with his sword. His black robes fluttered, and he turned into a beam of black light that shot through the sky. Just this move made the expressions of Ao Xieyun, Xie Danqiong, and the others change at the same time. However, this sword strike had made them realize that Gu Duxing had never used his full strength against them when they were exchanging pointers in the past. Chu Yang smiled lightly and shouted through telepathy, Calamity Sword technique, one ray of cold light pierces 10,000 feet. With a swing of his sword, a dazzling cold light suddenly appeared in the sky. Then, it suddenly scattered into thousands of rays of cold light, covering the sky and earth and whistling toward Chu Yang. Gu Duxing was energized. He shouted, Heaven's Solitude. Heaven's Solitude. Heaven's Solitude. 3 consecutive moves. Suddenly released. The whole world seemed to have suddenly become bleak and bleak at this moment. The thousands of rays of cold light collided with the solitary sword rain. Both of their bodies shook at the same time. They were actually evenly matched and floated back at the same time. Gu Duxing was shocked. The Calamity Sword technique was indeed extremely powerful. It was just one move, but he actually needed to use 3 moves to resolve it. While retreating in the air, Gu Duxing suddenly changed from retreating to rising up. He shouted, Heaven's Solitude. A mighty ray of solitary sword aura shot straight out. This move made Chu Yang's heart tremble. This move of Gu Duxing's even carried an aura of Dao. Chu Yang's black-robed figure turned around in the air while retreating. He shouted through telepathy, Calamity Sword. What's the harm in slaughtering the world? At the same time, a sharp sword aura was also unleashed. It met Gu Duxing's Heaven's Solitude in the air. With a soft pop, the Heaven's Solitude sword aura scattered. That sword aura of what's the harm in slaughtering the world. Although more than half of it was eliminated, the remaining momentum did not change. It rushed straight toward Gu Duxing. Impressive. Gu Duxing exclaimed in his heart. He shouted, Earth's Solitude. He made another move to resolve this move. He was currently one level higher than Chu Yang, and an important one at that. He was a sword saint, but he was a sword supremacy. However, he was actually at a disadvantage against the Calamity Sword technique. Immediately after, the follow-up moves of Chu Yang's Calamity Sword technique came endlessly like rolling wave. A sharp wall buried deep does not change, gathering wind and clouds to become the emperor. A sword blade that has been famous for thousands of years, whistling winds and clouds from the west to the east. By the time the two moves of Calamity Sword, cutting off the sentimental traveler, Gu Duxing's solitary sword technique had already been used up. The three solitudes of heaven, earth, and man merged into one and became heaven's solitude and heaven's solitude. However, by the time Chu Yang's move of iron wall and bronze wall fighting endlessly appeared, Gu Duxing's solitary sword technique was finally completely defeated. He retreated abruptly and went straight up in the air. The farther he retreated, the smaller he became in the air, almost becoming a black dot. Then, he came down from the air with an awe-inspiring aura. His sword flashed, and an inexplicable aura spread down. Gu Duxing sighed. A sword to the peak, he took 2 steps in the air, and the sword light carried with it a desolate and heavy aura. Such an aura seemed to be able to make one completely forget the past and enter a wonderful state. Chu Yang shouted, "What a sword of oblivion! Look at me, what more can I ask for in this life?" Their swords clashed densely in the air, and the sound was dense and fragmented, like the wind blowing on a lotus or the rain hitting on a banana leaf. Gu Duxing's body spun and retreated, and then spun and advanced again. He said slowly, "Life and death, victory and defeat are all gone in a flash." The aura of emptiness of the world was even more intense in this move. Chu Yang flipped over, and the sword aura summoned in the air. Suddenly, the wind and clouds surged, as if gathering here at this moment, wanting to fill up the emptiness of the world that Gu Duxing had created. It was the gathering of the clouds. With a boom, the sword aura flew out, as if a bomb had exploded. Ao Xieyun and the other 3 screamed and scattered in all directions. In the battle just now, both Chu Yang and Gu Duxing had been controlling their strength and not letting it leak out. But now, both of them could no longer control it. The trees in a radius of hundreds of feet fell down neatly. The sword aura flew everywhere, cutting deep sword marks one after another on the mountain rock. Gu Duxing held his sword horizontally in front of his chest and said disappointedly, "Where can I find a soulmate in the world?" He turned around, and when he was about to turn back, the sword aura spread out for thousands of feet. When I want to turn back, I've already forgotten. Chu Yang perked up, and the 2 moves, Hidden Edge, Hidden Light, Endless Night, and Strategizing, Long Day and Moon, were used consecutively. Right at this moment, he finally discovered where Gu Duxing's biggest problem was. Too much focus. Too much focus. Too much focus, that was the flaw. Let's say a few more words today. When he woke up in the morning, the first thing he did was turn on the computer excitedly. Then, he blacked out and was hit on the head. 10 chapters of explosion, and not only did he not get first place, he was behind by almost 200 votes. Currently, the gap was still increasing. He threw a punch with all his strength, but it was a resounding slap to his own face. The first thing was to quickly unseal that single chapter. I had a kind of hysterical feeling of powerlessness, the feeling of all the strength in my body being sucked out, and my mind going blank. Or maybe that was the feeling I had when I saw it. At this moment, I was extremely envious of Old Cat. This was the foundation. Was the foundation something that couldn't be matched even if one risked their lives? My heart was extremely bitter. 10 chapters. I had 100,000 prideful brothers, but every time I fought, I only had a few thousand troops. The remaining 10,000 plus people surrounded the battlefield as cheerleaders. The cheerleaders watched their brothers fight bloody battles and kill with all their might, and then shouted, "Do your best. I support you in spirit." They watched their brothers retreat step by step, watched their brothers give their all and finally fail, and then suffered together. They all said, "I'm also a member of Prideful World, and I feel terrible." Cheerleader A, "I'm young, and I don't have the ability." Cheerleader B, "I don't have money, and I only smoke the cheapest 5 yuan cigarettes." Cheerleader C, "Others don't go, Why should I spend my own money? Cheerleader D. I don't know how to register, I'm a computer noob. Or, I have money, but I don't want to give a certain amount. Or, although I feel terrible, it has nothing to do with me. Alright, I won't say any more, I will continue to fight with my brothers, my sisters. Continue to fight. Or, after this month, Prideful World won't fight for first place anymore. My courage is very likely to be exhausted this month. Today's update: in the evening, my waist is very uncomfortable. After posting this update, I will go out for a massage. Tonight's update will be updated. Today's update is still the same. Say to my brothers and sisters, I beg for votes. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.